Greetings, this is yours truly, Lord Karo, welcome to my domain. The Force Awakens. 21 Chapter 1, Despair and Hope. Full summary. Izuku Midoriya, diagnosed as quirkless at a young age, faces a life marked by hardships and despair. His situation changes dramatically one evening when he returns home and discovers a profound shift within himself. He is Force sensitive. This revelation leads him to encounter Force ghosts from the Jedi Order, who have appeared to guide him. As Izuku begins to understand his new abilities, he embarks on a journey of growth and training under the guidance of these legendary figures, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his life as the Force awakens at last. Star Wars elements, but not a crossover. Hello to whoever is reading this. I have had this idea for a long time saved in a folder on my computer, forgotten. The reason? I just didn't feel ready to write a story like that. That has changed and I have decided to get to work turning the idea into a story. First and obviously, this story belongs to the My Hero Academia universe, duh. I like both the anime and the manga, and now that we are one chapter away from the closing of Izuku Midoriya's story, my brain has decided that it is a good time to start publishing the FIC. Sometimes I wonder if you can strangle a brain. Because if it were possible, believe me, I would do it with mine without hesitation. Well, leaving that aside, something I like even more than MHA is Star Wars. So one day I thought, what if I made Izuku Force sensitive and bam, the plot of this FIC started to appear in my head. Yeah, I know, not very original but it is what it is. Oh, I forgot, I also have a huge affection for the 2008 Clone Wars, so you will see many morals of the series. Because they fucking rule. So here you have it, I hope you like it and if so, leave a review. That would let me know that people like my ramblings. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the mouse logo, yes, Chuck and Cheese. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals powerful characters or the Force personified. Never give up hope, no matter how dark things seem. Chapter 1, Despair and Hope. Despair, the deep feeling that there is no hope and that you can't do anything to improve a difficult situation. When Izuku Midoriya was 4 years old, he discovered the harsh truth of the world: people were born unequal. He got beat up by Katsuki Bakugo, or Kachan as he liked to call him, the boy who was supposed to be his best friend, and his minions, as the blonde liked to call the two boys who followed him, just because Izuku stood up and defended a kid in the playground. He stood his ground valiantly with a smile on his face, acting as a shield, a protector. Just like a hero like All Might would do. Something that made him proud and happy, as he was one small step closer to his lifelong dream, to be a hero. Yes, his quirk hadn't awakened yet, but it didn't matter. He had managed to be that boy's hero without it. He had started his path to heroism even before he got his quirk, so when it awakened, he would be ready. But 2 days later, poor Izuku's dreams were cruelly crushed by the doctor's words. It's best you give up. That simple sentence hit him like a bullet train, making him feel as if the weight of the world was on his little shoulders. He dropped his All Might action figure and stared into nothing. His mother was worried, so she asked the doctor what he meant and whether her little boy had a problem. The doctor calmly pointed at the X-ray of Izuku. By all rights, if you have a quirk, it'll manifest at the age of 4 or later, depending on the complexity of the quirk. You told me yours was attraction of small objects and his father had some kind of fire-breathing quirk, right? Inko Midoriya just nodded. The doctor pointed at the image again. According to research, the origin of quirks is in the pinky toe. People without the extra joint deviated from the base human. Unfortunately, little Izuku here has 2 joints. Something that in this era is exceedingly rare, but it indicates he is a standard model. The doctor sighed heavily, not liking what he was going to say. I'm sorry to tell you this, Ms. Midoriya, but your son has no quirk. Izuku was catatonic. He didn't register when his mother took him home, he didn't eat, nor he did utter a single word. At night, his worried mother tried to cheer him up playing All Might's debut video. The laugh of the #1 hero resonated the bedroom, breaking his stupor. He turned to his mother with tears in his eyes and a vacant expression. He's an awesome hero. Do you think I could be one T2, mommy? His mother broke, seeing her precious son so devoid of life. Hugging him, she told him she was sorry, blaming herself for his lack of quirk. Unaware that Izuku wanted some kind of closure, someone to told him he could be a hero even without a quirk. He didn't blame her because he knew she was doing everything she could to comfort him, overwhelmed by her emotions and the guilt she felt for not being able to fulfill her little one's dream. Thus, it was that fateful day when Izuku Midoriya knew despair for the first time in his short life. The Force Awakens. 8 years later, Izuku Midoriya's life was a nightmare. Being the only quirkless kid in the school, he was the favorite target of bullies, especially of one Katsuki Bakugo. His former best friend, Izuku still considered him as such, had taken a liking to using his quirk on him, not caring about consequences, as he was the wonder boy of his school. Someone the adults knew would become a pro-hero, so they began to favor him to the detriment of the rest of the students. It was not unusual to see Kacchan, and his two friends, free from any punishment. Even so, Izuku had tried to report his bullies to his junior high teachers, hoping they would put an end to the abuse he was subjected to. Something he learned was the worst thing he could do. As he discovered on the way out of school when Kacchan and his henchmen beat him even harder for daring to tell on them. Izuku never tried to report the abuse again, fearful of the consequences and the beating that awaited him if he did it. But for Izuku, the worst thing wasn't the beatings but the indifference of his classmates. Everyone was afraid to approach him, much less befriend him, fearing becoming the next to be bullied. He was avoided as if he had a contagious disease. They just assumed he didn't exist. And that was something that hurt worse than 1,000 beatings. So he simply gave up and embraced despair as his only company. The one who would never abandon him no matter what he did. The Force Awakens. It was afternoon, and he was limping to the apartment complex where he lived with his mother. The place was quite ordinary, perfect for middle-class people. Located in the suburbs of Musudafu City, home of the famous and prestigious UA Academy, All Might's alma mater. His hair was full of ash, droplets of dry blood stained his clothes, which were burnt and tattered. He had a black eye and his body bared to the world the abuse he had suffered at the hands of his peers. He was broken. I'm lucky Mom must work the night shift today. I don't think I can fool her. Not with these injuries. Izuku winced at the thought of his mother seeing him like this. She didn't deserve the trouble or the despair of her failure of a son coming home like that. Not when she worked tirelessly to support them both after his father had walked out on them when he was 4, a couple of days after he was diagnosed as quirkless. He looked at the stairs and sighed, weighing if it was worth going up to his apartment. Maybe it would be easier to sleep on a park bench, saving him the effort. His sore and tired body would surely thank him. But the image of his mother crossed his mind. The only person who still tied him to the world. He couldn't do it, it wouldn't be fair to her. I don't want to worry Mom, you idiot. Izuku berated himself as he started walking up the stairs, flinching at the pain. He eventually made it to the apartment and took off his shoes as best he could, depositing them at the entrance. He lumbered into his room and began to take off his torn clothes, grimacing at the friction of the fabric against his wounds. He took a towel and headed to the shower, fighting against the desire to lie down on his bed. He had to wash and then disinfect the wounds that adorned his body, otherwise, his situation could worsen, and his mother would discover the truth. After drying himself, he took his torn uniform and placed it in a bag, thanking himself for anticipating and getting replacement uniforms with the little savings he had. Then he took the bag and placed it in his backpack to get rid of the clothes the next day on his way to school. Izuku looked back at his room with longing, looking at each of the hero items he owned. The giant poster of All Might in his golden era suit that his father had given him when he turned 3, the endeavor-shaped night lamp that his mother had bought so he could sleep safely when she was working at night. The collectible cards of Japan's top 100 heroes that he and Kacchan had put together with so much effort. Memories of a better time when his life wasn't the nightmare he now found himself in. His stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten at lunch because he was hiding from Kacchan and his friends. Looking at the kitchen, he decided to simply grab a yogurt from the fridge to fool his hunger, aware that it wouldn't be enough but not having the desire to prepare anything more elaborate. Izuku just wanted to sleep, not because he was eager to go back to school the next day but because he wanted his pain to go away at night. So he walked out the kitchen towards his bedroom. But then he felt a strange, yet familiar sensation of warmth that surrounded him like a blanket, one that gave him security and comfort, making him forget for a moment all his problems, worries, and the pain he felt. Izuku, overcome by the positive emotions he was suddenly feeling, closed his eyes and could feel a flicker of hope and dreams, something he thought had died in him a long time ago but that now filled him with emotion. His mind, which was cloudy at the time, cleared, like a ship that had spent a long time lost at sea and had now found a lighthouse to guide it towards its destination. The warm feeling that embraced him told him, without needing words, to leave the apartment towards the railings. And so, he did decisively and without a hint of doubt, something he had never done before in his life. Outside, the most beautiful view awaited him. The moon was high in all its splendor, surrounded by hundreds of thousands of stars, an unthinkable spectacle that was impossible to enjoy in the city. But there it was, defying all logic. Just so he could watch and bask it in all his glory. Izuku lowered his head, feeling his entire body tremble with a sense of longing. He felt at peace for the first time in years. He fell to the ground clutching his chest as the tears began to fall down his face. Closing his eyes he felt the sensation embracing him stronger, protecting him, just like his mother's arms did when he was little. He had a purpose. He felt complete at last. He opened his eyes and smiled genuinely, not the mask he always wore in school to hide his true feelings but one that expressed his happiness. "Thank you, whoever you are," Izuku said softly. A few minutes later he got up as best he could, still surrounded by the warm sensation. He looked up one last time before returning to his apartment and nodded. Soon fatigue overcame him and Izuku Midoriya went to sleep. But unlike all the previous nights, he was able to rest peacefully without any nightmare to torment him. With a smile plastered in his face, the first in a long time. Oblivious to him, the sensation he had felt began to take on a human form, a transparent blue one with a hooded cloak covering it. The figure walked a little and put his hands on the window of his room. Then its voice sang harmoniously. "Do not despair anymore, little Izuku. I have missed you and have longed for our connection to be re-established. You have nothing to fear, now that we are together, we can strive to achieve your dreams. But for now, rest and remember that I am with you, always." 21 Chapter 2, Hope Awakens. Heya again, folks. This is the second chapter of this FIC. This chapter marks the debut of the first Force Ghost who will help Izuku on his path to greatness. And his first friend in ages, too. First off, I want to thank you all for the support you've shown for the first chapter. 9 favorites and 18 followers, almost twice as many as my other story on the site, and in 3 days. You guys are fucking awesome. Secondly, Kilo 8, let me thank you for being my first reviewer, my dude, it means a lot to me. I hope you find this chapter as interesting as the last one. Well, I don't think I have anything more to tell you now. But if I somehow forget something, it will be at the head of the next chapter. So here you have it. I hope you like it, and if so, leave a review. That would let me know that people like my ramblings. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the mouse logo, yes, that one with the D. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts, dreams and/or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful living characters dialogues like All Might. Belief is not a matter of choice, but of conviction. Chapter 2, Hope Awakens. A booming laughter startled everyone present in the square. The group of villains, who until recently had been emboldened, began to tremble with fear. Cold sweat trickled down their faces. Some even threw their weapons to the ground, hoping that this action would spare them from the divine punishment about to befall them. There's nothing to worry about anymore. Do you know why? Because I am here. One of the villains looked up fearfully, coming face to face with Japan's #1 hero, Super Might. A young man in his late 20s with green hair, freckles on his face, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire square. Surrender, villain. Your evil plans to use all these people as hostages won't work. Not while I'm here. The civilians erupted into applause and cheers for their savior, their relief palpable at being rescued by such a benevolent figure. The leader of the villains stood up and shouted at him. The Force Awakens. The high-pitched sound of the alarm clock shattered the silence of the room, dragging Izuku from his sleep. Covered with All Might's limited edition blanket, he let out a groan, reluctant to leave the comforting embrace of his bed. "Just turn off, stupid alarm clock," he muttered groggily, his arms stretched in the direction of the device while he buried his face deeper into his pillow. To his astonishment, the blaring noise stopped instantly, as if Mr. Time's alarm clock, a merchandise item from an old hero who had retired years ago, had been silenced by some unseen power. Izuku blinked in confusion. Each morning, he fought a battle with this alarm, and today, a mere gesture had silenced it. It felt strangely significant, like a sign. It was just like yesterday. The same feeling that surrounded me, only this time it came out of my hand. What's happening? He wondered to himself. A voice broke the silence, causing Izuku's heart to race. It was about time that things shut up. Thanks for that, kid. It was seriously starting to get on my nerves. Who in the nine hells of Corellia would design something like that? If only I wasn't a ghost, I'd dismantle it and figure out how it works, then get rid of that horrendous sound forever. Izuku's eyes flew open, and he sat up with a jolt, his pulse quickening. He turned his back to the source of the voice, his room now feeling eerily cold. AGG ghost. The room was silent except for Izuku's heavy breathing. His mind raced. Had he lost his mind? The idea seemed plausible given that he had just turned off the alarm clock without touching it, as if he had somehow developed a quirk overnight. Please, tell me who you are," he stammered, his voice trembling with fear. Are you AVV villain with AG ghost Q quirk?" The voice responded, tinged with a hint of amusement. "A villain? No, kid. I'm a Force ghost." The speaker sounded almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to scare you. I wasn't supposed to talk to you without the others' presence, but I made a mistake. Sorry for that." Izuku's mind raced faster, trying to grasp the ghost's words. A Force ghost. What does that even mean? He thought, his heart still pounding. How can you be a ghost? And what do you mean by the others? Izuku asked, trying to steady his voice while grappling with the bizarre situation. He was convinced this had to be a dream, explaining the surreal experience of talking to a ghost on a Friday morning. Perhaps a blow from Kachan the previous day had triggered this hallucination. The ghost sighed, a sound that seemed to echo yet oddly comforted Izuku. "Listen, kid, it's a long story. I was once a Jedi. The Force allowed me to return in this form. By the others, I meant other Jedi like me." Izuku's heart raced as he tried to process the ghost's words. Jedi and the Force were foreign concepts to him, but the sincerity in the ghost's tone seemed undeniable. A gentle whisper seemed to envelop him, like a soft breeze. "Do not be afraid, Izuku." A new voice murmured softly. "This is not a dream, nor are you in any danger. I am here to help you. Trust in me." Its calming presence eased the green-haired boy's anxiety. He blinked, attempting to steady his thoughts. After a deep breath, he turned to the ghost, his curiosity overcoming his initial fear. "What is your name? What is the Force? And what's a Jedi?" The ghost looked somewhat taken aback, clearly not expecting to be the first to speak with Izuku. The presence of others was supposed to come first. He sighed. "My name is Anakin Skywalker," he said, his voice steady but with a touch of discomfort. "The Force is a powerful energy field that binds the universe together. It gives Jedi their power and allows us to do incredible things. As for Jedi, we were protectors of peace and justice in the galaxy, wielders of the Force." Izuku listened intently, his eyes wide with wonder. He took a deep breath and started to bombard Anakin with questions. "What do you mean by the galaxy? Are there more planets with people living on them? What kind of creatures live there? Are there more heroes like the Jedi? How do you travel between planets? And what exactly can the Force do? Can everyone use it?" The Force chuckled, seeing its chosen one be the target of the 12-year-old's curiosity. Nodding in satisfaction at having chosen Anakin as the first Jedi Izuku would meet. Anakin chuckled softly at Izuku's barrage of questions. He couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. The boy reminded him of his younger self, brimming with curiosity. Raising his hand, he started. "Slow down, kid. One question at a time. First, I don't think that your galaxy and mine are the same, so I can't answer your questions about yours. But in the galaxy where we Jedi come from, yes, there were many planets with people living on them. The galaxy was vast and filled with distinct species, each with their own cultures and histories. The boy's eyes widened in amazement. Other planets, with people on them. That's incredible. Some were peaceful, while others were more aggressive. The Jedi were like heroes, negotiators and peacekeepers. We made sure that conflicts in the galaxy didn't escalate, but as everybody we had our flaws. We traveled between planets using starships that could move faster than the speed of light. Starships. Faster than light. The boy's jaw dropped. That's amazing. So, people could just travel to other planets whenever they wanted. Did you ever fly a starship? Anakin's eyes sparkled, a glint of pride in his eyes. Not only did I fly starships, Izuku, but I was also one of the best pilots in the galaxy. Some even said I was the best in the entire Jedi Order. I could maneuver and navigate through the fiercest battles and emerge unscathed. Izuku's excitement grew with each answer. Wow, you were the best pilot. That's so cool. What kinds of battles did you fight in? What were they like? Anakin's expression grew somber. Looking at Izuku, he saw a reflection of his younger self and his former Padawan, Ahsoka. I fought in many battles during the Clone Wars, he began, his voice imbued with the weight of those memories. The war was brutal and relentless. We battled droid armies controlled by the Separatists, trying to protect the Republic and its people. Izuku's eyes widened, absorbing every word. It must have been tough, fighting in a war. How did you manage? Anakin sighed, remembering the toll of the countless battles. That's a story for another time, Izuku. Maybe when you're a little bit older. After all, it's not a tale a kid like you should hear. He said, ruffling Izuku's hair gently. Izuku nodded, his respect of Anakin growing, understanding that the Force ghost was trying to protect him and his innocence. The Force, you mentioned it before. What exactly is it? What can it do? Is it like a quirk? Does everyone have it, or is it something special only some people can use? His questions tumbled out one after another, driven by his insatiable thirst for understanding. Anakin smiled, glad to shift the topic to something more hopeful. The Force is an energy field that connects all living things in the universe. It's everywhere and in everything, binding the galaxy together. Those who can tap into the Force, like the Jedi, can perform incredible feats. We can move objects with our minds, sense the emotions and intentions of others, and even see glimpses of the future. Anakin, seeing that Izuku didn't seem to have any new questions, continued. Yes, every living being has the Force, but not everyone can use it, he explained. Like your quirks, it's something you're born with, a sensitivity to the energy that surrounds us. But even those who are Force-sensitive need training to harness its power. Jedi are trained from a young age to understand and control the Force. It requires discipline, focus, and a strong connection to the world around you. Izuku's eyes sparkled with fascination. It sounds amazing. Can I learn to use the Force too? Anakin's gaze softened, seeing the hopefulness in the child's eyes. The fact that you're talking to me, a Force ghost, means you have some connection to the Force, Izuku. With time and training, you might be able to develop your abilities. But for now, just remember that the Force is with you, always guiding and protecting you. Izuku was so engrossed in the conversation that he lost track of time. The stories, the knowledge, the sheer excitement of learning about this new world captivated him completely. But as the minutes ticked by, he remained unaware that he was now running late for school. Anakin glanced at the clock on the boy's bedside table. Kid, shouldn't you be getting ready for school? You don't want to be late, do you? Izuku's eyes widened in panic as he saw the time. Oh no, I'm going to be late. He scrambled out of bed, rushing to get dressed and grab his things. As he threw his backpack over his shoulder, he heard his mother's voice from the kitchen. Izuku, breakfast is ready. Hurry up, you'll be late for school. I'm coming, Mom. Izuku called back, his heart racing. He threw a quick, grateful glance at the Force ghost. Thank you, Anakin. I'll see you later, he said, dashing out of his room. Anakin watched him go with a smile on his face. May the Force be with you, Izuku, he said, before disappearing. In the kitchen, Izuku Midoriya was setting the table with a simple but hearty breakfast. As Izuku rushed in, she smiled warmly at him. Good morning, Izuku. Did you sleep well? Izuku nodded, still absorbed in the extraordinary conversation he'd had that morning. Yeah, Mom, I did. Thanks for breakfast. He quickly started eating, trying to make up for lost time. Izuku watched her son with a mixture of affection and concern. She suspected he was being bullied and anticipated he might make excuses to skip school. But today, there was something different about him, a lightness in his step, a spark in his eyes. Izuku, you seem happier today. Did something good happen? Izuku paused, a smile spreading across his face as he remembered his conversation with Anakin. Yeah, Mom, I guess you could say I had a really good dream. It made me feel hopeful. Inko's heart warmed at her son's words. It had been a long time since she had seen him that positive. I'm so glad to hear that, Izuku. Just remember, no matter what happens at school, you're strong and capable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Izuku nodded, finishing his breakfast quickly. I will, Mom. Thanks. He stood up, grabbing his backpack. Inko walked him to the door, giving him a quick hug. Have a good day at school, Izuku. Be careful. I will, Mom. See you later. With that, Izuku dashed out the door, his mind racing with thoughts of the Force, the Jedi, and the incredible galaxy that Anakin had told him about. As he headed to school, the familiar knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. School was a place where he often faced bullying, especially from Kachan and his gang. They mocked him for his quirklessness, making every day a challenge. But today felt different. Talking to Anakin had given him a new perspective, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. They will, Izuku. He heard the Force whisper to him. When he arrived at school, he was greeted by the usual jeers and mocking laughter. Hey, Deku. Running late because you were daydreaming about being a hero again. Kachan sneered, shoving Izuku against a locker. Izuku took a deep breath, remembering Anakin's words about the Force being with him. Leave me alone, Kachan, he said, trying to muster as much confidence as he could. Kachan's eyes widened in surprise at Izuku's unexpected defiance, but he quickly masked it with a scowl. Whatever, Deku. You're still useless. Throughout the day, Izuku found himself thinking about the Force and Anakin's stories. Despite the bullying, he felt a small spark of hope inside him, a belief that he was not alone and that maybe he had the potential to be something more. He hoped that one day he could harness that power and become the hero he always dreamed of being. By the end of the school day, Izuku stepped out of the building with a big smile on his face for the first time in a long time, feeling that his future was filled with extraordinary possibilities. 22 Chapter 3, A Padawan's New Path. Sup, fellas. First off, for those of you who had read chapters I and 2 earlier, I wanted to let you know that I've made an itty-bitty change to the story. Izuku is no longer 10 years old, he is now 12. This change was made for reasons that will be revealed in future chapters. Second, thank you all for the support you've shown for the second chapter. When I published it, it had 9 favorites and 18 follows, but now, 3 days later, it stands at the amazing number of 32 favorites and 45 follows. Man, I'm humbled as fuck, so again, thank you, guys. You make me very happy. To show you how much your support matters to me, this update will be a double one. Yes, you read that right, today you'll get to read chapters 3 and IV because you guys rock and fucking deserve it. Golden Eagle 62. Well, I won't be revealing anything as it would be a huge spoiler, but yeah, that's an idea that's in the draft. So stay tuned to see it. So, with that out of the way, I'll share my thoughts at the end because I don't want to spoil things and I really like how this chapter turned out. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please leave a review and yada yada. You know the rest. Please do. See you at the end. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the mouse logo, the one with the big-ass resort in Florida. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues like All Might. A single chance is a galaxy of hope. Chapter 3, A Padawan's New Path. Izuku Midoriya watched her son bolt out of the apartment, a rare sight considering she had to practically drag him out of bed for school the previous day. Despite Izuku's efforts to conceal his troubles, her maternal instinct screamed that something was amiss at school. But today, something was different. She wondered what could have caused such a dramatic shift in her son's mood. Setting her cup of tea on the kitchen counter, Inko pushed aside her exhaustion from the night shift. Her concern for Izuku outweighed her fatigue. She placed her hand on the doorknob of her son's room, hoping to uncover the reason behind his sudden cheerfulness. But she paused when she heard voices. "That wasn't fun, Master. You know very well that I'm not very good with kids." Inko's eyes widened, and her heart skipped a beat. Who could be in her son's room? She cautiously opened the door just a crack, her protective instincts on high alert. To her utter astonishment, she saw 3 faint figures standing in the room, each exuding a calm yet powerful presence. The first figure was the tallest, with a youthful, vigorous appearance. His light brown hair was cut short and tousled, and he wore a brown and beige Jedi tunic with a leather belt. Despite his strong appearance, there was a latent sadness in his blue eyes, as if he carried the weight of past experiences. Inko instinctively knew this was the voice she had heard. Another voice, calm and measured, responded. "Patience, Anakin. Remember, you were once a child yourself. Children need guidance more than lectures. I sense the boy is quite similar to you, that's why the Force chose you to speak to him first." This voice belonged to an older man with a well-groomed beard and brown hair streaked with gray. He wore a similar Jedi tunic, but his demeanor was more composed and serene. His eyes held wisdom and kindness, suggesting years of experience and understanding. He stood with a dignified posture, exuding a sense of calm authority. A third, much older and gravelier voice added, "Yes, yes. Much to learn, young Skywalker still has. Guide the boy, we must. Important, he is." This figure, the smallest, commanded the most attention. He was a small green creature with large, wise eyes and long, pointed ears. Dressed in a simple brown robe and leaning on a wooden cane, he emanated an aura of immense power and wisdom. His expression was one of gentle patience, as if he had seen countless lifetimes and learned from each. The older one continued, his tone gentle yet firm. "Anakin, remember that the path of the Jedi is one of learning and growth. Izuku has much potential, but he also has much to learn. We are here to help him on that journey, just as you once were helped." The green powerful creature nodded, his ears twitching slightly. "Guide him, we will. Grow strong in the Force, he must." Inko's eyes darted from one figure to the next, trying to comprehend the surreal scene unfolding before her. She felt a sense of peace emanating from the figures, the same peace she briefly felt when Izuku rushed to school. Anakin sighed. "I know, Obi-Wan, Master Yoda. I understand the importance of guiding him, but I feel overwhelmed. I also sense that the others are nearby, but not yet ready to reveal themselves. This boy, Izuku, needs all the help he can get." Hers heart raced as she tried to process what she was seeing and hearing. She accidentally took a step back, hitting the door with her elbow. The sudden noise caused the ghostly figures to turn their attention toward the door. Obi-Wan's eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Hello there. You must be Izuku's mother." Inko's mind raced, struggling to process the scene. Before she could react further, her vision blurred, and she felt herself falling. The last thing she heard was Yoda's gravelly voice, filled with surprise. "Unexpected, this is. Other Force sensitives in this world, there are." As she collapsed gently to the floor, Anakin couldn't resist a smirk. "Nice to see you still have that effect on women, Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan shot Anakin a wry look. "Very funny, Anakin. Let's focus on the task at hand, shall we?" Anakin chuckled softly as he nodded, while Obi-Wan knelt beside Inko, ensuring she was comfortable until she regained consciousness. The Force Awakens. As the afternoon sun cast a golden hue over Musudafu, Izuku made his way home with a bounce in his step. The excitement of learning more about the Force had given him an unusual burst of energy. He couldn't wait to see Anakin and hear more stories about the Jedi and their incredible abilities. Arriving at his apartment building, he rushed up the stairs, his mind buzzing with curiosity and anticipation. He fumbled with his keys, barely able to contain his eagerness. Finally, he unlocked the door and swung it open. To his astonishment, the sight before him was nothing short of extraordinary. The room was filled with a warm, ethereal glow that seemed to envelop him in a comforting embrace. The warmth was soothing and invigorating, as if the Force itself was responding to his excitement and curiosity. Izuku's eyes widened as he saw Anakin and 2 other figures, an older man, and a small green being, seated on the sofa with his mother, who was looking unusually calm and composed. The three Jedi appeared as serene and composed as ever, their ghostly forms glowing softly in the dim light of the apartment. Inko looked up with a welcoming smile. Izuku, you're home. I hope you had a good day at school. He stood frozen in the doorway, his jaw slightly agape. He could hardly believe his eyes. Mom, he stammered, his voice trembling. Are they really? His mother nodded, her expression filled with a mix of wonder and reassurance. Yes, Izuku. These three have been here all day. They've been telling me about the Force and how I, too, have a sensitivity to it. They explained so much. I can hardly believe it myself. Anakin, noticing Izuku's stunned expression, offered a reassuring smile. Allow my two friends to introduce themselves properly. The older man, sitting with a calm and dignified posture, inclined his head slightly towards the boy. His voice, filled with warmth and wisdom, carried a gentle authority. Hello, Izuku. I am Obi-Wan Kenobi. It is a pleasure to finally meet you. Your curiosity and eagerness to learn are commendable. We are here to guide you on your journey with the Force. Next to Obi-Wan, the small green figure with large, wise eyes and long pointed ears, who had been observing the scene with a gentle smile, leaned slightly forward. His voice was soft yet carried an ancient depth. Young one, Yoda, I am sensitive to the Force, you are, and much potential you have. Help you, we will. Izuku's voice, though filled with wonder, was tinged with disbelief. This is unreal. I only met Anakin this morning, and now there are two more Jedi here. I still can't believe it. Inko chuckled softly at her son's reaction. Then she gave him a reassuring smile. Obi-Wan nodded understandingly. It is indeed a lot to take in. But remember, the Force is a part of everything, and it responds to our emotions and intentions. Your excitement and openness have drawn us closer. Yoda's eyes twinkled with wisdom as he added, trust in the Force, you must. Feel it, you already do. Guide you, we shall. Learn, you will, much. After the ancient creature's comforting words, Izuku turned to his mother with a hopeful expression. Mom, will you be learning about the Force with me? Will we both train together? Inko's eyes softened with a blend of love and understanding. She stepped closer to her son, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Izuku, while I won't be able to walk the same path as you, I will always be here to support you. I'm proud of you and I'm excited to see where this path leads you. I'll be with you every step of the way, even if it's just from the sidelines. Obi-Wan's gaze was gentle as he addressed the boy. Your mother's support is invaluable. Even though she may not be learning the ways of the Jedi directly, her presence and encouragement will be a great asset to you. Yoda, his eyes reflecting a deep wisdom, nodded in agreement. Great aptitude for a Jedi, you have, young Izuku. Altruistic, you are, to share your training time with your mother. A true hero, this makes you. The green-haired boy's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he absorbed the heartfelt words of his mother and the Jedi Masters. The weight of their encouragement overwhelmed him. He took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to hold back the wave of emotion. Anakin watched the tender moment between Izuku and his mother with a reflective smile. Memories of his own past, particularly of his mother's unwavering support on Tatooine, washed over him. The comfort and encouragement she had given him had been a guiding light in his early days, much like the support Izuku was receiving now. Anakin took a step forward, his expression filled with nostalgia and resolve. He looked at the boy with newfound determination. Izuku, seeing the bond you share with your mother reminds me of my own experiences. My mother's support was crucial to me, just as your mother's is to you now. Because of this, I would like to offer myself as your primary master in the ways of the Force. Both Obi-Wan and Yoda were astonished. The Force sang in exhilaration, its energy palpable in the room. The warm, ethereal glow seemed to intensify, reflecting the excitement and approval of this new alignment. His old master, raising an eyebrow and clearly surprised, spoke up, Anakin, are you sure? This is a significant responsibility. Are you prepared to take on the role of Izuku's primary instructor? He nodded firmly, his eyes never leaving the boys. I am sure. I believe I can guide Izuku in a meaningful way. It's an opportunity to give back and help someone just as I was helped. Besides, Snips ended up being a great Jedi, didn't she? Yoda's eyes twinkled with wisdom and approval. A wise decision, this is. Much to learn, Izuku has. A strong bond with his mother, he shares. Guide him well, you will. Obi-Wan studied his former Padawan for a moment, then gave a small, approving nod. Very well, Anakin. If you are committed to this path, then I trust your judgment. Izuku is fortunate to have such dedicated guidance. Izuku, overwhelmed by the moment, looked from Anakin to Obi-Wan and Yoda, then back to his mother. His voice was filled with emotion. Thank you all. I won't let you down. The Force Awakens. As the morning light gently filled the apartment, casting soft shadows and illuminating the serene faces of those present, Anakin led Izuku, Obi-Wan, and Yoda to the center of the room, where a peaceful atmosphere had been established. The warm, ethereal glow from earlier still bathed the room in a gentle light. Inko sat on the sofa, watching with a mixture of pride and awe. Anakin turned to face the green-haired boy, his expression solemn but filled with warmth. Izuku, today marks the beginning of your journey as my Padawan. He began, his voice resonating with a profound sense of purpose. This is a significant moment, not only for you but for all of us. Izuku's heart pounded in his chest, the gravity of the moment sinking in. He stood straighter, his eyes wide with determination. Obi-Wan stepped forward, his demeanor as composed as ever. A ceremony to mark the transition of a student into the role of a Padawan is important, he explained, his voice soothing yet firm. It signifies a commitment to the path of the Jedi and the responsibility that comes with it. Yoda nodded in agreement. A ceremony, important it is. Mark the beginning of training, it will. Anakin cleared his throat, his expression serious yet warm. Even though we don't have a Padawan lightsaber to present to you, the spirit of the ceremony remains. It's not the physical tools that matter, but the commitment and bond we're forming. Izuku's gaze flicked to his mother, who gave him an encouraging nod. He felt a swell of emotion, his heart brimming with hope and resolve. Obi-Wan, with his calm demeanor, added, indeed. We shall use what we have to symbolize the transition. The Force itself will be our guide. Yoda nodded in agreement, his wise eyes twinkling with approval. Simple, yet meaningful, the ceremony will be. Attuned to the Force, we are. Symbolize, we will. Anakin extended his hands, and a gentle, shimmering light began to form between them, a soft glow that represented the Padawan-master bond they would share from that moment. Izuku watched in awe as the light danced and flickered, feeling its warmth and energy. Do you accept the teachings of the Jedi and the responsibility that comes with it? Anakin asked, his voice steady and strong. Izuku, with a deep breath, nodded fervently. I do. Obi-Wan stepped forward, placing his hand over the shimmering light in Anakin's hands, adding his own Force energy to it. The light intensified, swirling in a beautiful display of unity and power. Then by the will of the Force, I present you to your master, Anakin Skywalker. May your training be fruitful and your journey enlightening. Yoda, his cane tapping softly on the floor, raised his arms as if conducting an unseen symphony. Guided by the Force, you shall be. Strong in the light side, you will grow. The ethereal light grew brighter, enveloping Izuku in a cocoon of warmth and energy. He felt the Force flowing through him, connecting him to Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and even his mother. It was a moment of profound unity and purpose. Anakin touched Izuku's shoulder with a gesture of acceptance, the connection between Master and Padawan solidifying. Thank you, Master Anakin. I'll do my best to learn and grow, Izuku said, his voice filled with emotion. Anakin smiled, the nostalgia in his eyes giving way to pride. I know you will, Izuku. Together, we'll face the challenges ahead. Inko, watching from the sofa with tears of pride in her eyes, felt the significance of the moment. Her son's journey had taken a consequential turn, and she was overjoyed as she witnessed his first step towards his new path. Obi-Wan again stepped forward with his usual calm demeanor. Izuku, remember that the role of a Padawan is one of both learning and teaching. As you progress, you will come to understand the deeper aspects of the Force. Your journey will shape you, just as it shaped those who came before you. Yoda nodded sagely. Much to learn, you will. Patient and diligent, you must be. The Force guides us, but it is through effort and understanding that we truly grow. As the ceremony concluded, the room settled into a peaceful stillness. The glow of the Force lingered, casting a warm, golden light on everyone present. Izuku felt a deep sense of calm and resolve wash over him. And, after 8 long years, he felt hope again. 21 Chapter 4, Lessons. Hello there. How is life treating you, my dear readers? Here is the 4th chapter of this FIC, one where Izuku learns from his masters. As you may have noticed, this story is progressing slowly. That's because I want to show a somewhat plausible evolution of Izuku. I believe you can't become proficient with a power, no matter how simple, in a short amount of time. Also, as a Star Wars fan, I was disappointed with how Disney and KK handled Rey's character progression, not Daisy Ridley. I mean, come on. The woman is beautiful as fuck and received unjustified hate. Dislike Disney, not the actors, you morons. So, yeah, Izuku won't be defeating a dark side user at the age of 12 in the near future, sorry for that. I'll share more of my opinions and thoughts at the end because I don't want to spoil anything. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please leave a review and yada yada. See you at the end. Disclaimer: you already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the mouse logo, that one. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues, like All Might. A lesson learned is a lesson earned. Chapter 4, Lessons. Katsuki Bakugo sat in his classroom, the morning sun streaming through the windows as he stared out, lost in thought. The past 2 weeks had been the strangest. Something about Deku had changed, and he couldn't quite put his finger on it. It wasn't just the way Deku carried himself now. There was a confidence, a sense of purpose in his steps that Katsuki hadn't seen before. He had noticed it during their last encounter, the way Izuku seemed to endure his hits with a quiet determination, as if he had something more driving him than the usual dreams of becoming a hero. It was irritating. Deku's newfound composure and resolve felt like a challenge, something Katsuki wasn't used to, and he despised the unknown. He had always been the one in the spotlight, the one everyone expected to be the best. And now, out of nowhere, Deku was refusing to be the stepping stone he was destined to be. He clenched his fist, his knuckles cracking softly. What's he up to? He muttered to himself. The thought of Deku surpassing him was infuriating, but it also sparked a curiosity that Katsuki couldn't ignore. Later that day, during lunch break, Katsuki decided it was time to confront Izuku directly. He stormed through the hallways, eyes fixed on his target. Izuku was sitting by himself under a tree, reading a book. The serene scene only fueled Katsuki's irritation. "Oi, Deku!" Katsuki shouted as he approached. Izuku looked up from his book, his expression calm and unperturbed. "What do you want, Kachan?" Izuku asked quietly, his tone even. Katsuki didn't waste any time. "What's with you lately? You've been acting all high and mighty, like you've got something to prove." Izuku stood up, closing his book. "I'm just focusing on my goals, Kachan." "Goals? You think you can just waltz around like you're better than everyone else?" Katsuki's voice rose, filled with frustration. "You're nothing but a fucking Deku. You're a waste of space." Without warning, he launched a strong explosion towards Deku. The force was enough to knock him back, but Izuku didn't flinch. He remained standing, his expression unchanged, though scorch marks were visibly burned into his clothes and skin. Katsuki watched in disbelief. "What the hell?" Izuku's gaze met Katsuki's with a calm intensity. "I'm not trying to be better than anyone, Kachan. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself." Everyone present was expectant, watching the confrontation unfold. The air was tense, and murmurs of surprise and curiosity rippled through the crowd. Katsuki's anger was palpable, but the sight of Izuku standing his ground, seemingly unaffected, only deepened his confusion and frustration. Katsuki's fists clenched as he tried to process the scene before him. The unfamiliar, composed demeanor of Izuku unsettled him, and he could feel his own rage bubbling beneath the surface. "I don't know what you're up to, but I won't let you just ignore me like that." Izuku's calm expression remained as he spoke. "I'm not ignoring you, Kachan. I'm just choosing not to let your anger control me." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Katsuki's frustration reached its peak as he stormed off, unable to reconcile the strange sense of calm emanating from Izuku. The crowd began to disperse, whispering amongst themselves about the unusual exchange they had just witnessed. Once Katsuki had left and the crowd had dispersed, Izuku sighed, recalling the teachings of his masters. Master Yoda had emphasized the importance of patience and humility, showing him that self-knowledge and acceptance of one's limitations are key to growth. Anakin, though more impulsive, had taught him to defend himself no matter the situation, but at the same time to pick his battles carefully. Obi-Wan taught him to be calm in moments of conflict and to live with self-control. As he stood there, lost in thought, a familiar presence made itself known. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the wise and stoic Jedi ghost, appeared beside him, a look of approval on his ethereal face. "Your response was commendable, Izuku," Obi-Wan said, his voice gentle yet firm. "You managed the situation with remarkable composure." Izuku nodded, a small smile forming on his lips, whispering to the Force Ghost. "Thank you, Master Obi-Wan. I'm still learning, but I'll keep your teachings in mind. I'm proud of you, my boy. Always remember that." With those encouraging words, Obi-Wan's form began to fade. Izuku was left alone with his thoughts. Izuku gently touched his Padawan braid, a soft smile spreading across his face. The challenges of the morning had only deepened his resolve to become the best version of himself. He felt a renewed sense of readiness and determination, prepared to face whatever came next on his journey. The Force Awakens. In the ethereal realm where the Force ghosts resided, Obi-Wan Kenobi materialized beside Yoda and Anakin Skywalker. The shimmering glow of their forms cast an otherworldly light on the ancient surroundings. His expression was one of quiet pride as he recounted the morning's events. "Master Yoda, Anakin," Obi-Wan began, his voice carrying a serene weight. "Izuku showed remarkable composure today. He handled a confrontation with great maturity and control." Yoda nodded approvingly, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "Good, this is. In a brief time, learned well, young Midoriya has. Patience and humility, he practices." Anakin, ever the impulsive one, couldn't help but interject. "That's great and all, but did he fight back? You can't let bullies push you around. Sometimes you have to stand your ground with more than just words." Obi-Wan smiled softly at Anakin's words. "He did stand his ground, Anakin. But he chose not to escalate the situation. He demonstrated control and wisdom, qualities which are essential for a true Jedi. As you may know." Anakin crossed his arms, a hint of a smirk on his face. All right, I get it. He's learning to balance strength with wisdom. Just make sure he remembers not to let anyone walk all over him." Yoda chuckled, his laughter a soft, soothing sound. "Balance, young Skywalker speaks of. Important, it is. Izuku learns well, he does." As the three continued their discussion, the air around them seemed to shimmer and shift, signaling the arrival of two other Force ghosts. Their presence serene and powerful. The woman, with a confident and commanding aura, spoke first. "Izuku has a strong heart," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "It's evident in how he handles himself without letting his own emotions dictate his actions." The man beside her nodded, his expression one of thoughtful confidence. "He's on the right path. The Force is strong with him, and he's finding his own way to harness it. It's not about fighting every battle, but choosing the right ones and understanding the bigger picture." Anakin, with his characteristic impatience, turned to them. "Where have you two been? We could have used your input sooner." The woman smiled gently, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "We've been watching from afar, Anakin. Izuku isn't ready to see us yet." The man added, his tone calm and reassuring, "Sometimes the best way to guide someone is to let them discover their path on their own. When the time is right, we'll step in." The scene shifted as the group of Force ghosts watched over Izuku from their ethereal vantage point. The serene landscape of their realm mirrored the tranquility they felt about the young Padawan's progress. Each of them knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but with the combined wisdom of their teachings and Izuku's determination, they were confident he would find his way. The Force Awakens. In the quiet of their living room, a soft, eerie glow enveloped the room as Izuku sat across from the spectral form of Anakin Skywalker. The stillness of the space was occasionally broken by the gentle rustling of the curtains in the afternoon breeze. His mother was still at work, leaving Izuku an opportunity to seek Anakin's guidance. "Master," Izuku began, his voice tinged with hesitation, "I've been thinking about ways to help my mom. She works so hard, and I want to find a way to earn some extra money to support her. Do you have any ideas?" Anakin's spectral eyes softened as he regarded his Padawan, a look of earnest admiration in his ghostly expression. "I admire your desire to help your mother, Izuku. It shows a lot of character. There are many ways to earn money, even for someone your age." The key is to find something that aligns with your skills and values. The green-haired boy's face brightened slightly, a mix of eagerness and curiosity evident in his eyes. I'm good at studying and helping others. Maybe I could tutor some of the younger kids at school. Anakin smiled, but his expression soon turned thoughtful, reflecting a deeper understanding. Tutoring is a great start, but I know you have a keen interest in how things work. Don't think I haven't noticed your fascination with taking apart that old alarm clock of yours, Sparky. He chuckled softly, the sound carrying a hint of nostalgia. Izuku chuckled, slightly embarrassed by the nickname his master had given him. When he asked why, his master just shrugged and told him he had too much enthusiasm and energy in him. Yeah, I guess I am pretty curious about how things work. Anakin's ghostly form seemed to flicker with a burst of enthusiasm. You know, back in the day, he began, leaning forward with a twinkle in his eyes, I built a protocol droid out of spare parts and scrap metal when I was just a kid. C-3PO, we called him. And do you know that pod racer I used to win the Boonta Eve Classic? I put that together with whatever I could scavenge on Tatooine. If you've got a knack for mechanics, there's a world of opportunities out there for you. Perhaps you could start a small business, fixing and tinkering with gadgets for people. Izuku's eyes widened with wonder. Really? You build a droid in your pod racer by yourself? Anakin nodded, a glow of pride emanating from him. Yep. It's all about creativity and resourcefulness. If you can see the potential in the parts around you, you can build or fix almost anything. A shadow of doubt crossed the green-haired boy's face. But I've never worked on anything like that before. I've always focused on hero training and schoolwork. What if I mess up or can't handle it? Anakin's spectral form radiated a reassuring warmth as he placed a comforting hand on the green-haired boy's shoulder. It's natural to feel unsure. Everyone starts somewhere, and making mistakes is part of learning. It's not about proving anyone wrong but proving to yourself what you're capable of. Even if things don't turn out perfect, you'll gain experience and skills. Izuku's gaze dropped, uncertainty clear on his face. But what if I'm just not good enough? I've never really thought about doing mechanical work before. The Force seemed to embrace him, a soothing presence that offered comfort and reassurance. Anakin smiled warmly. You don't have to be an expert right away. If you're looking to earn some extra money, consider offering to fix or customize things for people. I've seen your sketches and notes on heroes, Sparky. I'm impressed and know for sure you got a talent for design. Start small, and see where it takes you. You might surprise yourself with what you can achieve. Izuku looked up, a mix of nervousness and determination in his eyes. Thanks, Master Anakin. I'll think about it. Maybe it's worth trying, even if I'm not sure where to start. Anakin's hand remained on his Padawan's shoulder, a gesture of steadfast support. Remember, Sparky, that's why I'm here as your master. If you ever have doubts or run into problems, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be here to help you figure things out and guide you through it. You've got potential, and I believe in you. Izuku nodded, his gaze sweeping over his small apartment. His eyes fell on an old desk lamp on the kitchen table, its light flickering erratically. Hey, Master Anakin, he said, a spark of inspiration in his voice. Look at this lamp. It keeps flickering, and I'm not sure what's wrong with it. His master's ghostly form shifted with renewed interest. Perfect. Let's take a look at it together. I'll guide you through the process. Izuku carefully carried the lamp to the small dining table, setting it down with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Anakin watched with a supportive smile, his presence a calming influence, ready to offer advice as needed. First, you'll want to make sure the lamp is unplugged before you start working on it, the chosen one of the Force instructed. His Padawan nodded, his hands steady as he unplugged the lamp from the wall. Got it. What's the next step? Next, you need to remove the bulb and then the cover from the base. Sometimes flickering can be caused by loose connections inside, Anakin explained, his voice guiding Izuku through the process. The boy worked on removing the bulb and then carefully unscrewed the cover. Inside, he saw the wiring and some connections. This looks a bit complicated. His master's encouragement was unwavering. It's okay. Just take your time. Check if any wires are loose or if there's any visible damage. Sometimes just reconnecting things properly can fix the problem. Izuku examined the wires and noticed one of them seemed a bit loose. With careful precision, he adjusted it and tightened the connection. Like this. Anakin's spectral form flickered with approval. Exactly. Now, Put the cover back on and screw it in tightly. Make sure everything is secure. The green-haired Padawan reassembled the lamp, ensuring each part was correctly in place. He then plugged it back in and turned it on. The lamp lit up steadily, its flickering gone. Izuku's face brightened with a triumphant smile. It's working. Thanks for your help, Master. Anakin clapped him on the shoulder, his spectral form glowing with pride. You did great, Sparky. You've got the right mindset. But always remember, every small project helps you learn and grow. Keep this up, and you'll develop skills that could be really valuable. Izuku nodded enthusiastically. I'll definitely keep practicing. Thanks for believing in me. As the evening light bathed the room in a soft glow, the warmth of their shared moment lingered. The Force Awakens. Izuku arrived at Takoba Municipal Beach, the rugged terrain scattered with trash and debris. The air was heavy with the scent of saltwater and damp earth, and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a steady, calming backdrop. Master Yoda's ethereal form materialized, his presence casting an otherworldly glow over the scene. He surveyed the beach with a thoughtful expression, his eyes reflecting the potential hidden within the chaos. Disorderly, yet full of potential, it is. Use the environment to your advantage, we will. The boy nodded, his curiosity piqued. What should we start with, Master Yoda? The Jedi Grandmaster's form shifted slightly as he began to explain. First, balance and resistance, focus on we must. On unstable ground, these skills critical are. Follow me, young Midoriya, and learn from the environment, you shall. He led the green-haired boy to a particularly uneven patch of the beach, where large rocks, fallen branches, and mounds of debris lay scattered across the ground. Balance, you must maintain, Yoda instructed, pointing to the uneven terrain. Step carefully from rock to rock, avoiding the trash and debris. Distractions, they will create. Focus, you must. Izuku took a deep breath and began to traverse the rocky terrain, his concentration fixed on each step. The uneven ground made the task challenging, but he focused on maintaining his balance, stepping from rock to rock with caution. Sometime later, his foot slipped off a rock, and he tumbled into a pile of trash, sending a cloud of sand and debris into the air. The green-haired Padawan quickly scrambled to his feet, brushing off the sand with a determined expression. Yoda's voice cut through the sound of the waves. Patience, young Midoriya. Balance, not just physical but mental, you must find. The Padawan nodded, shaking off the embarrassment of his fall. He tried again, moving with more caution but still struggling to keep his footing. He stumbled into a fallen branch, nearly losing his balance, and had to catch himself before he fell again. Good, young Midoriya. Now, add speed, you must, Yoda called out, his voice filled with encouragement. Quickly, but carefully, navigate the obstacles. Izuku picked up the pace, his movements more urgent now. He leapt from one rock to a refrigerator, but his haste led him to misjudge a step, and he slipped, crashing into a pile of debris with a loud thud. He groaned, rolling to the side, and took a moment to catch his breath. Yoda observed with a mixture of patience and encouragement. Failing, part of learning it is. Continue, you must. Adapt and overcome, you will. The green-haired boy, though tired and bruised, rose with renewed determination. He resumed the course, this time more focused on his movements. Each slip and stumble became a lesson, helping him refine his technique. After several more attempts, Izuku managed to navigate the course with a semblance of speed, though not without occasional missteps. He finished the course, panting heavily, a sense of accomplishment in his eyes. Yoda's form glowed with approval. Better, you are. Learn from each failure, grow stronger, you will. Persist, in mastery you shall achieve. As the sun began to set over the horizon, casting long shadows across the beach, Yoda turned his attention to the next phase of the training. Now, resistance training, we shall begin, Yoda announced, gesturing to a large piece of driftwood partially buried in the sand. Lift this log, you will. Use the force, focus your mind. Strength, it will build. Izuku approached the log, gripping it firmly. He strained against the weight, his muscles working hard as he struggled to lift it. The Grandmaster watched with a nod of approval, his presence a steady source of encouragement. Feel the weight, young Midoriya. Not just physical strength, but mental as well, is required. Focus your mind, channel your energy, Yoda advised. The Padawan grunted with effort, his face flushed and sweat trickling down his brow. Despite his exhaustion, he remained determined. Slowly, He lifted the log, his movements steady and deliberate. He held it above his head for a few moments before setting it down with a sigh of relief. Excellent, young Midoriya. Balance and strength, you have practiced. Remember, not only physical prowess but mental clarity and focus, crucial they are. Yoda said, a hint of pride in his voice. Izuku sank down onto the sand, breathing heavily but smiling. Thank you, Master. It's been tough, but I think I've learned a lot today. Yoda approached, his ethereal form glowing softly. The path of a Jedi and a hero can be difficult, but in perseverance, true strength lies. Remember, young Midoriya, always learning and growing, you must. The boy nodded as the Grandmaster's form began to fade. He stood up, taking one last look at the rugged beach before him. Despite the day's challenges, he felt a renewed sense of determination. With a final glance at the horizon, Izuku started his journey back home, ready to face whatever came next. 21 Chapter 5, The End of Uncertainty. Welcome back, dear readers. Here's another chapter of what I hope is your favorite story. If not, then hopefully it will be in the future, please. This chapter has a lot of lore and explains what I mentioned in the end notes of Chapter 2, the part about Anakin and Izuku having similar pasts. Just to set the stage for those who aren't familiar with Sith shit for those who don't get it from SW. Now, you guys are amazing. I really didn't expect all the support you've been giving to this FIC. With each new chapter, the stats go up, and that makes me really happy. I think I'm getting better at writing the FIC and the author's notes. I really enjoy writing Izuku's journey to UA. But what do you guys think? Leaving that aside, I'll proceed to answer your reviews. My favorite part. Megalogo 15, thanks for that. I hope you continue to like the FIC. Pigeon King, yes, Izuku being proficient with technology is an essential part of his character in this FIC. Having a prodigy of a teacher like Anakin makes it not a big surprise. He'll likely build things possible within his universe and according to his abilities. But who knows? Maybe one day Izuku will arrive at UA flying in an X-Wing. Trindamer 95, yes, that's something that will be covered in this chapter and the next two. I hope you enjoy them. Dennis Spiral Flame 55, it's great that you're giving the FIC a chance despite that. Don't worry, Izuku will use the Force and his lightsaber to be a great hero and a great Jedi. I really thank you for your words of encouragement, and I hope the FIC continues to meet your expectations. If you like the interactions between Katsuki and Izuku, believe me, you will like Chapter 7. Let me tell you, Yoda speak is a nightmare, and I almost always have to go back and check if the dialogue seems like something Yoda would say. Having Anakin as a teacher makes it impossible for Izuku not to learn how to dismantle something in 2 minutes, haha. Regarding Inko, when she finds out that Izuku is quirkless, she tells him that she's sorry, but not because she thinks he can't be a hero, she blames herself for that fact. I always thought that Izuku didn't go crazy in canon because he had something that grounded him, his mother and his dreams. I tried to reflect that, although maybe I should have dedicated a few more lines to explain the support she gave him during the 8 years between the diagnosis and the beginning of the FIC. As for the pairings, I have a couple of girls in mind, but I haven't decided yet. Again, thanks for the review, and I hope you continue to like what I do. With that out the way, let's continue with the chapter. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please leave a review and yada yada. You know the rest. See you at the end. Disclaimer, you already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas, and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the mouse logo, the one with its founder frozen corpse in its basement. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful living characters dialogues like All Might. Who we are never changes, who we think we are does. Chapter 5, The End of Uncertainty. Izuku sat cross-legged on the floor of his room, the early morning light filtering through the window. His posture was relaxed, but his mind was alert, ready for the day's training. Besides, Obi-Wan's ghostly form materialized, exuding a serene expression on his face. Good morning, young Midoriya, Obi-Wan said, his voice gentle and reassuring. Today, we deepen your connection with the Force. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. Let the Force flow through you, and feel the energy around you. The green-haired boy nodded and shut his eyes, taking deep, steady breaths. He concentrated on the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, trying to sense the Force around him. It was as if a comforting wave of energy enveloped him, connecting him to everything in his surroundings. He felt the subtle vibrations of the air, the distant hum of the city outside, and the warmth of the morning sun. Clear your mind of distractions, Obi-Wan continued, his voice a calming presence. Feel the Force as it binds all living things together. Let it guide you. Izuku tried to focus, but his mind was a swirl of questions and images. Master Obi-Wan, he ventured hesitantly, how did the Jedi use meditation to connect with the Force? What did it feel like for them? Obi-Wan's smile broadened, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of his years. Meditation was a crucial practice for the Jedi, young Midoriya. Through it, we could center ourselves, clear our minds, and attune more deeply to the Force. It allowed us to remain calm and focused, even in the midst of chaos. Izuku's imagination painted a picture of the Force as an endless ocean, its vastness both mesmerizing and overwhelming. He envisioned himself floating in this ocean, the Force's waves gently lapping against him, yet the depth and expanse seemed daunting. Despite his efforts to stay focused, he felt as though he was struggling to keep afloat in this ocean of energy. As he struggled to maintain his focus, the room around him began to blur and dissolve. The Force responded as if sensing his difficulty, transporting him to a new location. He found himself standing in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Its grand hall, adorned with intricately carved stone pillars, was filled with soft, diffused light streaming through tall, arched windows. The air was cool and crisp, carrying a faint scent of ancient wood and incense. The gentle hum of distant conversations and the soft rustling of robes created a tranquil ambiance that seemed to echo the timeless wisdom of the temple. Izuku looked around in awe, taking in the grandeur of the ancient architecture. Obi-Wan stood beside him, guiding him through. In the spacious courtyard of the temple, a group of younglings of diverse species were seated in meditation. Master Yoda stood before them, his presence commanding yet comforting. Meditation, young ones, essential it is, he instructed. Calm your mind, center yourselves, and connect with the Force. Through it, guidance and strength you will find. His eyes, deep with ancient knowledge, softened as he observed the younglings. The boy observed in fascination as the initiates sat in a circle, their expressions calm and their connection with the Force palpable. The Force flowed around like a gentle current integrating them to the vast galaxy. Obi-Wan's voice was soft as he spoke to Izuku. This is what meditation means to the Jedi. It's not just about finding peace but also about tapping into the deeper currents of the Force. This connection allows them to receive guidance, clarity, and strength. He felt a profound sense of calm wash over him as he observed the young Jedi. The image of the Force as an ocean became clearer, revealing that it wasn't something to struggle against but rather to flow with. He understood that this realization marked a significant step in his journey. As the memory of the Jedi Temple slowly faded away, Izuku found himself back in his room. The soft morning light had shifted to the gentle glow of midday. The sounds of the city outside were muted, and the air seemed warmer and more soothing. With renewed focus, he centered his mind once more. He could now feel the energy around him with greater clarity, like a steady, comforting current flowing through and around him. Each breath deepened his connection, and his mind became more attuned to the subtle vibrations of the Force. The Force Awakens. Takoba Beach was bathed in the soft light of the July morning sun. The coarse sand beneath Izuku's feet felt warm, and the rugged terrain was scattered with bits of discarded trash. The rhythmic crashing of waves against the shore created a soothing soundtrack, while the dense foliage rustled gently in the breeze. Master Yoda appeared beside him, his presence a blend of tranquility and vitality. Ready for more, are you, young Midoriya? Yoda's voice, calm and full, carried a hint of playful anticipation. Izuku, his green hair tousled by the wind, looked up, with eagerness and caution. Yes, Master Yoda, I'm excited to try something new today. Yoda surveyed the chaotic beach thoughtfully, his eyes reflecting a deep wisdom. Practice with telekinesis, we shall. Begin with small objects, you must. Focus and control, important they are. Izuku's eyes widened with curiosity. Telekinesis. That sounds exciting. How do I start? Yoda pointed to a collection of small objects scattered across the sand, pebbles, tiny sticks, and bits of discarded trash caught in the undergrowth. Start with these. Lift one at a time, focus your mind, and let the Force guide you. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling as he steadied his focus, remembering to let himself drift in the ocean that the Force was, feeling its gentle currents surround him. With his hand extended both in his mind and in the physical world, he directed his focus toward a small metal tube resting near a mound of trash. His brow furrowed in concentration as he felt the Force swirl around him, like a gentle breeze stirring the leaves. The tube quivered slightly, then slowly began to lift off the ground. Izuku's hand trembled as he guided the metal piece through the air, maneuvering it carefully over to a makeshift pile of debris. The tube settled with a soft thud among other small objects, and he let out a relieved sigh. "Good, young Midoriya," Yoda's voice rang out with approval, cutting through the ambient noise of the beach. "Progressing well, you are." Encouraged, the Padawan focused on a plastic gallon. The object wobbled as he attempted to lift it, but he managed to guide it with a bit more control this time. As he worked, his gaze wandered around the cluttered beach. A thought struck him. "Master Yoda," he began, "what if I use my telekinesis to help clean up the beach? It could be good practice and it would help make the place nicer." The Grandmaster's eyes twinkled with approval at the Padawan's initiative. "A very good idea, young Midoriya," he said with a nod. "Practice while doing good, you shall. Help clean the beach, you will." His voice filled with encouragement. Izuku's face brightened with enthusiasm. "Great. I'll start with these smaller pieces and then work my way up." As the boy continued to lift and move small objects with increasing ease, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden light over the scene. Yoda's form shimmered in the sunlight, his voice filled with pride and encouragement. "A great hero and a great Jedi, you will be," Yoda said, his tone imbued with deep satisfaction. "The path you choose, noble and true it is. Continue your training, and much you will achieve." Yoda paused, his eyes reflecting a deep sense of pride. "Much potential, you have shown, young Midoriya. The strength of your heart and the clarity of your mind, they set you apart. To see the good in others and strive to make a difference, without expecting reward, this is the mark of a true Jedi and a true hero." Izuku felt tears welling up as the Grandmaster's words of praise touched his heart. The encouragement filled him with reassurance, and made him feel that all his hard work was paying off. A reminder of why he was training so hard, to make a difference and live up to the ideals of both a Jedi and a true hero. "You have faced challenges and doubts, yet here you stand," Yoda continued, his voice filled with warmth and admiration. "With each lesson, stronger and wiser you become. Proud of you, I am. In you, the spirit of the Jedi lives on. The Force awakens." Izuku sat at his desk, the late afternoon light peeking through the window, casting a warm glow over his finished homework. As he awaited the conversation he knew was coming, a sense of anticipation bubbled within him. Anakin Skywalker's ethereal form appeared, his expression radiating warmth and encouragement. "Good afternoon, Sparky. How have your lessons been progressing?" The green-haired Padawan eyes brightened with enthusiasm. "Master Anakin, I've been practicing every day. Master Obi-Wan's meditation techniques are really helping me focus, and Master Yoda's telekinesis training is getting easier. I've even started using my abilities at home. Mom's been so surprised." Anakin's smile grew, pride evident in his gaze. "Atta boy, Sparky. You're making excellent progress. Meditation was never my strong suit, you know." Izuku tilted his head, his curiosity piqued. "Really, Master Anakin? I thought all Jedi were good at meditation. I saw some of the younglings at the temple, and none were struggling." Anakin chuckled, a touch of nostalgia in his voice. "Oh, I had my struggles with it. Obi-Wan always had to remind me to focus. There was this one time when I was your age. Obi-Wan found me trying to fix a utility droid at the temple instead of meditating. He wasn't too happy about it." Izuku smiled, but a shadow of uncertainty crossed his face as his thoughts turned inward. Anakin had rarely shared personal stories, and he hesitated, the weight of his past experiences making him cautious about prying. Memories of the harsh words and scorn from his classmates and teachers every time he had a question about something he didn't understand, just for being quirkless, made him hesitate. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of those years of abuse. Anakin noticed the change in Izuku's demeanor. "Is something troubling you, Sparky?" After a moment of internal debate, his Padawan decided to ask. "Master Anakin, you've never really told me much about your past." What was it like for you before you became a Jedi? Anakin's expression softened as he settled beside his apprentice, his gaze growing distant as he recalled his early years. I grew up on a harsh desert planet called Tatooine, he began, his voice steady but loaded with the weight of his past. Life was hard there. My mother and I were slaves. Every day was a struggle to survive. Izuku's eyes widened in shock and horror. Slaves? You and your mother? Anakin nodded, his expression somber. Yes, Sparky. It was a difficult existence. We had no freedom, and our lives were controlled by our owner. But despite everything, my mother always encouraged me to believe in a better future. Izuku felt a deep pang of sympathy for his master. He clenched his fists, his heart aching for his master's young self, who had endured such hardships. Master, I can't believe you went through that. It's so horrible. And your mother, she must have been so strong. Anakin sensed the storm of negative emotions within his apprentice. Placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, he spoke softly. I can feel your sadness and anger, Sparky. But not everything was bad. My mother was the kindest, most loving person I've ever known. She did everything she could to protect me, to make sure I was safe and happy, even in such a harsh environment. Izuku's emotions swirled inside him, a mix of sadness, anger, and fear. The thought of Anakin and his mother being slaves filled him with a deep sense of injustice. He could feel his heart racing, his breath quickening as he grappled with the intensity of his feelings. The shadows in the room seemed to grow darker, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Anakin noticed the change, his own past experiences making him acutely aware of the danger these emotions posed. Izuku, he said gently, using the boy's given name, his voice a calming presence, it's okay to feel these emotions. It's natural. But you must learn to control them, not let them control you. The green-haired boy looked up at Anakin, his eyes wide with fear. Master Anakin, what if I can't control them? What if I fall to the dark side? Anakin's gaze softened, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding and empathy. He took a moment to collect his thoughts, the weight of his own past evident in his voice. Izuku, he began, his tone gentle but firm, the dark side thrives on fear, anger, and hatred. But it's not the emotions themselves that lead to the dark side, it's how we choose to handle them. Everyone feels these things, even Jedi. The key is to acknowledge them, understand them, and then let them go. You can do this with the guidance of the Force, or with the support of your loved ones. Both can help you find balance and peace. He paused, placing a reassuring hand on his Padawan's shoulder. I've been where you are, and I understand your fear. I was once afraid too. But remember, the Force is your ally. It will guide you, help you find balance. Trust in the Force, and trust in yourself. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. But how do I let go of these emotions? They feel so strong. Anakin smiled gently. It's not easy, and it takes time. But meditation helps. It allows you to center yourself, to find peace within the chaos. And remember, you're not alone. You have me, Master Obi-Wan, and Master Yoda. We're all here to help you. He looked at Izuku with a determined gaze. He wasn't going to let his Padawan go through the same pain and despair he had felt when he experienced the dark side, when he was Vader. The boy nodded, feeling a bit of the fear and tension ease away. Inside, a cluster of thoughts and emotions swirled as he processed his master's words. He grappled with the conflicting feelings of fear and hope, struggling to find a balance between his self-doubt and the newfound clarity that Anakin's guidance had provided. Thank you, Master Anakin. I'll keep trying. Anakin's expression grew thoughtful. Let me tell you more about my mother. She always found a way to make me smile. Telling me stories, teaching me about kindness and hope. She believed in a better future, even when things were at their darkest. Her strength and love kept me going. Izuku's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Your mother sounds amazing, Master Anakin. I wish I could have met her. Anakin nodded, his expression tender. She was, Sparky. She was my strength and my guiding light. He looked directly into Izuku's eyes. It's important to remember the good, even in difficult times. Your mother has been a great support for you, just like mine was for me. Focus on that love and support. It will help you stay on the right path. The green-haired boy felt a warmth spread through him, the connection to his own mother strengthening his resolve. I understand, Master Anakin. I'll remember that. Anakin nodded, his expression filled with pride as he continued his tale. One day, a Jedi named Qui-Gon Jinn came to Tatooine with his Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. They saw something in me, potential that I didn't fully grasp at the time. His voice carried a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude as he recounted the moment that changed his life. Qui-Gon believed I was the chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force. He freed me and took me to the Jedi Temple. Izuku listened intently, absorbing every word. But it wasn't easy. At the temple, I felt like an outsider. The other initiates had been training since they were toddlers. I was older, and my experiences made it hard for me to fit in. Obi-Wan did his best to help me, but there were many times I felt alone. Izuku's heart ached for his master. That sounds really tough, Master Anakin. But what happened to Master Qui-Gon? Why couldn't he help you? Anakin's gaze grew distant, his eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and resolve. Master Qui-Gon was a remarkable Jedi. He saw potential in me and believed in my future. But his journey was cut short. During our mission to Naboo, we faced the Sith apprentice, Darth Maul. Qui-Gon fought bravely, but in the end, he was mortally wounded. The story resonated deeply within the Padawan. He found himself reflecting on the similarities between his own struggles and those Anakin had faced. Both had experienced feelings of isolation and were searching for their place in a world that seemed vast and unwelcoming. Master, Izuku said thoughtfully, it's strange. Your past and mine, they're so similar. I felt alone and out of place too. Sometimes I even think that all of this is an accident, that maybe I'm not meant to be a Jedi, that my struggles and the challenges I face are just random events without any real purpose. Anakin's eyes softened with understanding as he listened to Izuku's heartfelt admission. It's not uncommon to feel that way, he said gently. Many who walk the path of the Jedi have felt lost or uncertain at times. It's a part of the journey, facing those moments of doubt. Izuku's gaze dropped to the floor, his thoughts racing. Anakin took a deep breath, sensing the depth of his apprentice's inner turmoil. He placed a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. Listen, Izuku. Our pasts, with all their struggles and pain, shape us but do not define us. The Force is a guiding light in our lives, and while it may sometimes feel like we are stumbling in the dark, it is always leading us toward our destiny. He continued, I remember feeling isolated and out of place when I first arrived at the Jedi Temple. I didn't fit in, and my background seemed so different from those of the other initiates. But through those experiences, I learned that it is not the circumstances of our past that determine our future, but how we choose to rise above them. Izuku's eyes met Anakin's, a flicker of hope igniting within him. So, you're saying that even when things seem uncertain or when I doubt myself, there's still a purpose in everything. Anakin nodded, his expression firm and reassuring. Exactly. A very wise Jedi once said, nothing happens by accident. The way I see it, it's the will of the Force that we are at your side to help you to become something greater. The green-haired Padawan's heart swelled with a newfound sense of clarity. The last flickers of self-doubt in his mind were finally extinguished. What had once been an inferno of negativity had now become a field of ashes. Thank you, Master. Your words give me strength. I will try to remember that even in my doubts, there's a reason for everything, and that my path, no matter how challenging, is leading me where I need to be. Anakin's eyes lit with pride and encouragement. You are growing stronger each day, Sparky. Embrace the lessons learned from your experiences and trust in the guidance of the Force. It will see you through, and I have no doubt that you will achieve great things. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. I am here with you every step of the way. Izuku Midoriya, many years later, would remember that exact moment with nostalgia, having discovered that it was the starting point of his path as a wise Jedi and the greatest hero ever known. 21 Chapter 6, The First Friend. Nice to see you it is. Missed you, I have. Here's the 6th chapter of the FIC, and the plot starts to move forward. You will see what I mean when you read the chapter. I promise we'll get to UA soon, so don't drop this, as I promise you the wait will be worth it. I forgot to tell you, but this chapter is part of another double update, Chapter 5 being the first one. The reason, Chapter 7, as I really want you to read it. Man, this is going to be a short initial author's note, as I don't want to talk about the chapter and spoil it for you. So, you already know this, I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please leave a review and yada yada. See you at the end. Disclaimer, you already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the laggy streaming service. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and/or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues like All Might. When we rescue others, we rescue ourselves. Chapter 6, The First Friend. The streets of Musudafu were bustling with the usual afternoon activity as 13-year-old Izuku Midoriya strolled through the city. He was honing his newfound ability to sharpen his senses with the Force, striving to expand his awareness beyond the immediate environment. The blend of chattering voices, honking cars, and distant sirens created a chaotic symphony that was both overwhelming and exhilarating for him. Suddenly, a distinct sound cut through the noise, a group of kids shouting. Izuku's senses zeroed in on the commotion, and a wave of unease washed over him. He quickened his pace, following the voices until he turned a corner and came upon the source of the disturbance. 3 older teens were encircling a kid his age, taunting him mercilessly. He had short, dark purple hair and weary eyes. One of the older kids stood unnaturally still, his vacant expression suggesting he was under some spell. "You're destined to be a villain with a quirk like that," one of the bullies jeered, shoving the purple-haired kid roughly. The pre-teen stood his ground, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. Just as one of the bullies picked up a rock and hurled it at him with malicious intent, Izuku's instincts kicked in. He reached out with the Force, his focus intense as he strained to halt the rock's trajectory. The stone slowed dramatically mid-air, quivering under his control before finally dropping harmlessly to the ground. The bullies stared in stunned silence, their heads swiveling as they searched for the source of the unseen intervention. The green-haired Padawan stepped forward, his heart racing but his resolve unshaken. "Leave him alone," he commanded, his voice carrying an authority that even surprised him. The bullies wavered, their faces contorted with confusion and anger. One of them, a particularly tall and burly teen, cracked his knuckles and sneered, "And who are you to tell us what to do?" Izuku took a steadying breath, standing firm. "I'm someone who won't let you hurt him." The burly teenager let out a mocking laugh and lunged at him, aiming a punch at his face. Izuku ducked just in time, his reflexes honed by his training. He used his heightened senses to predict the attacks, dodging the blows with surprising agility. Frustration mounted as the bully's attacks continued to miss. "Hold still, you little bastard," one of them shouted. Seeing Izuku's struggle, the purple-haired kid stepped forward, his voice resolute. "If you don't leave now, I'll call the police." The bullies exchanged uneasy glances. "Let's get out of here," one of them muttered. "He's not worth it." With that, they retreated, dragging their dazed friend with them. As they disappeared into the distance, Izuku turned to the purple-haired kid, who gazed at him with deep gratitude. "Are you okay?" Izuku asked, panting from the effort. Concern was evident in his voice. The other kid nodded, brushing dirt off his clothes with a mix of relief and gratitude. "Yeah, thanks to you. I'm Hitoshi Shinso. That was amazing. How did you do that?" A warm smile spread across the Padawan's face as he felt a genuine connection with Hitoshi. "It's my quirk, but I'm glad I could help. My name's Izuku Midoriya." "Thanks, Midoriya," Hitoshi said, his voice laced with genuine gratitude. "Most people just avoid me because of my quirk." That's an interesting quirk," the green-haired preteen said, trying to keep his tone casual despite the spark of curiosity in his eyes. "I've always been interested by how different abilities work and how they shape people's lives." Hitoshi looked at him, a bit puzzled by Izuku's subdued reaction. "Really? Most people don't seem that interested." Izuku offered a small, shy smile. "Yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a quirk enthusiast. I mean, I don't know much about others' abilities, but I find them intriguing. It's always cool to learn how different quirks can be used in various ways." "Since you're genuinely interested," the purple-haired kid began, looking more at ease, "my quirk is called brainwashing. If someone responds to me when I speak, I can control their actions for a short time. But because of how it sounds, people often think it's a villainous ability. That's why I get bullied or avoided." Izuku felt a pang of sympathy. "That's not fair. Your quirk doesn't define who you are. I think it's pretty cool." The purple-haired kid's eyes widened in surprise, a small smile forming on his lips. "You really think so?" Izuku nodded enthusiastically, his thrill palpable. Absolutely. Every quirk has its uses and challenges. My master always says, it's not the ability itself that defines you, but how you choose to use it. You're not a villain, Shinso. The other boy's smile grew a bit wider. Thanks, Midoriya. That means a lot. As they walked together, Izuku's nerves fluttered with anxiety. Social interactions beyond his familiar circle of schoolmates, Katsuki, his mother, and the Force Ghost still felt daunting. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. So, do you live around here? He asked, trying to make conversation. Yeah, just a few blocks away, his new friend replied. What about you? I live a bit farther, but I like walking through the city. It helps me clear my mind, Izuku said, glancing at him. Do you go to the local junior high? Hitoshi shook his head. No, I go to a different school. It's smaller, but the bullying still happens. Izuku's heart ached for his new friend, feeling a genuine pang of sympathy. Well, if you ever need someone to talk to or hang out with, I'm here. Hitoshi looked genuinely touched. Thanks, Midoriya, I'd like that. As they continued walking, the conversation became easier. Izuku found himself talking about school, mentioning his favorite subjects and the ones he found challenging. He told Hitoshi how he gained an interest in mechanics, a field that fascinated him with its blend of creativity and technical challenge, thanks to his master. His new friend explained to him how he found shelter in reading, especially in books that delved into strategy and psychology. The complexities of human behavior and the intricacies of strategic thinking interested him deeply. As more than a pastime, they were a means of understanding the world and navigating the social labyrinth he often felt trapped in. Izuku understood that as he told his very first friend in a long time how he picked up the art of analysis. The way different hero abilities functioned, and the strategic elements of their use provided him an escape of the abuses he suffered. He told Hitoshi about his drawings and how he filled sketchbooks with detailed illustrations of heroes and their powers, a proof to his fascination with the world of heroes, something that brought him joy. As they reached a quiet intersection, the time to part ways approached. The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over Musudafu. I really enjoyed talking with you today, Izuku said, his voice carrying a hint of reluctance. Hitoshi offered a genuine smile in return. Me too, Midoriya. It was good to make a new friend. Thanks for standing up for me earlier. The Padawan nodded, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. No problem. If you ever need someone to talk to or hang out with, just let me know. I'll definitely take you up on that, the other replied, his eyes reflecting gratitude. It's nice to have someone who understands. They exchanged a few more words, making plans to meet again and discuss their interests further. With a final nod and a friendly wave, they headed in opposite directions. The Force Awakens. Izuku Midoriya sat at the kitchen table, watching her son intently as he recounted his latest progress with the Force. The warm glow of the overhead light cast a soft halo around Izuku's face, emphasizing the excitement in his eyes. Every day you seem to have more control over the Force, Izuku, she said, her voice tinged with both pride and concern. Her fingers lightly drummed on the table, a habit she used to keep her nerves on check. Maybe it's time to update your status in the quirk registry. That way, you won't have to worry about explaining your abilities in the future. Izuku nodded, absorbing her words. He looked thoughtful. You're right, Mom. It would make things a lot easier. If on cue, the familiar figures of the three Force Ghost Masters materialized in the room. It shimmering as their ethereal forms took shape. Yoda's ears perked up with approval, his ancient eyes sparkling with wisdom. A very good idea, this is. Obi-Wan crossed his arms, his brow furrowed in thought. The shadows cast by the kitchen's light danced across his face, adding depth to his serious expression. Indeed, it's important to have a coherent explanation for young Midoriya's abilities. Anakin, ever the playful one, grinned as he nudged his former with a mischievous glint in the eye. All right, old man, let's come up with a believable story for Sparky's new quirk. Obi-Wan sighed, a hint of exasperation coloring his expression. We should keep it simple. Perhaps we could say it's a unique mutation that grants him enhanced senses and telekinetic abilities. Izuku listened intently, her eyes flicking between the ghosts as she absorbed Obi-Wan's suggestion. The kitchen, with its cozy and homely feel, seemed to fade into the background as the conversation deepened. That does sound straightforward, she agreed. Her gaze softened as she considered her son's future. Anakin laughed, his tone light and teasing, his eyes gleaming with a touch of mischief. "Oh, come on, Master. Where's the fun in that? How about we say the Force is a result of an ancient alien artifact?" Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow, his smirk growing. Glad to see his former apprentice was returning to his old mannerisms, the way he was before Sidious's machinations. An ancient alien artifact. Really, Anakin? Izuku couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of his own master's suggestion. The laughter was a welcome break from the more serious moments. An alien artifact suddenly giving me powers sounds like something out of a comic book. Yoda, observing the playful exchange with a subtle smile, occasionally interjected with his own witticisms. More absurd, it gets. As Anakin and Obi-Wan continued their banter, the room filled with a warm sense of camaraderie. Anakin leaned against the wall, his posture relaxed, and offered another idea. What about saying he inherited it from a distant ancestor? Obi-Wan, now fully immersed in the humor, pretended to ponder the suggestion with exaggerated seriousness. That's a somewhat believable explanation, Anakin. For a moment I thought you would say, Izuku was an alien who escaped his planet as a baby moments before it was destroyed. The chosen one of the Force grinned, feeling a swell of nostalgia as he recalled the playful antics from his days as Obi-Wan's apprentice. The memories of their time together, filled with both training and mischief, brought a genuine smile to his face. Inko, although enjoying the banter, decided it was time to get serious. Her face took on a firm expression as she interrupted the playful debate. "All right, you two, enough. We need a real solution here." Izuku, who had been attentively listening to the conversation, seized the opportunity to contribute his own idea. "What if we say that my quirk is a rare mutation of Mom's, one that uses my mind to enhance my senses, my physical abilities and allows me to move objects with it? It could be explained as a late-blooming ability that only recently manifested." The room fell into a contemplative silence as everyone considered Izuku's suggestion. The kitchen's familiar hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of the curtains seemed to fade into the background as the Force ghosts and Inko weighed the proposal. Just as they were about to delve further into the discussion, a new presence made itself known. The air seemed to shift, and a regal figure appeared. She wore a flowing white gown, its simplicity accentuated by a silver belt that was fixed at her waist. Her dark hair was styled in intricate braids, framing a face that radiated a serene and confident beauty. "Greetings, Izuku. Mrs. Midoriya," she said, her voice warm and calming, cutting through the room's previous tension. "I'm Leia Organa. It's nice to finally meet you after hearing a lot of you from these three." The green-haired boy and his mother stared in awe at the ethereal figure before them. Inko, though initially surprised, quickly assessed the regal presence with a mixture of respect and curiosity. She saw in Leia a leader who commanded respect without need for force. Izuku, on the other hand, was captivated by the serene and almost otherworldly beauty of the Force ghost. Caught in his admiration, Izuku's thoughts tumbled out awkwardly. "You look like a princess." His face flushed a deep red as he realized his blunder. He dropped his gaze, suddenly finding the color of the kitchen's floor intensely fascinating. Leia's expression softened into a fond smile. "Thank you for your compliment, Izuku. You can raise your head, there's nothing to be ashamed of." She turned her gaze towards Inko, her eyes radiating warmth. "Your son is a wonderful boy, you must be very proud of the way he acts and the great promise he shows." Inko, still processing the surreal moment, managed a nod. A small, proud smile crept onto her face. "Thank you, Leia. I am very proud of him." Anakin, unable to resist the opportunity for a bit of humor, smirked at his Padawan's reaction. He clasped Leia's shoulders with a playful gesture. "That's right, Sparky. This beautiful lady here is both a princess and my daughter, pretty neat huh?" His voice was filled with fatherly pride. Leia's smile faltered slightly, a brief shadow crossing her face as old memories flickered. She quickly masked her feelings with a more diplomatic demeanor. "Yes, father. Quite neat," she said, her tone steady. Despite having forgiven him for Vader's actions, there was still an aura of tension when he referred to her so casually. Obi-Wan, witnessing Anakin's tendency to divert important conversations into trivial matters, facepalmed. "Focus, Anakin. We're here to help Izuku." Leia returned her attention to Izuku and Inko, her demeanor once again warm and reassuring. "As I was saying, Izuku, you're doing wonderfully. Regarding the matter of your quirk registration, your idea of presenting the Force as a rare mutation is a good start, but it needs a bit more detail to be convincing." Feeling reassured by Leia's composed demeanor, Inko nodded. What would you suggest, Leia? The princess smiled gently. We should emphasize the gradual nature of this quirk. It would explain why it manifested later in Izuku's life. We could describe it as a dormant ability that needed a trigger or a significant event to awaken it. Anakin, now more focused, nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. And we can say that the training Izuku has been undergoing is a way to harness and control this quirk. Obi-Wan added, indeed. We could also highlight the unique aspects of his abilities, such as enhanced perception and telekinesis, as part of this mutation. Yoda, who had been observing the discussion with his characteristic calmness, gave a small nod. Complete, this explanation is believable, it will be. Izuku looked around at the supportive faces of the Force ghosts and his mother, feeling a deep surge of gratitude. The warmth in the room created a comforting atmosphere. Taking one of the empty notebooks with the Force, he began to draft the detailed and convincing explanation crafted by the group. As he wrote, his focus and determination were evident. When he finished, he looked at it and smiled fondly. Thank you, everyone. I'm ready to go to the city hall to update my quirk registry entry. Inko placed a reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. I'm proud of you, Izuku. Let's get this sorted out. With their task complete, the Force ghosts began to fade, their presence lingering like a comforting warmth. Anakin gave a final wink and a thumb up, Obi-Wan a reassuring nod, and Yoda a serene smile. Leia lingered a moment longer, her gaze full of hope and pride. May the Force be with you, Izuku, she said softly before disappearing. The room felt a little emptier as the Force ghosts departed, but their guidance had given Izuku and Inko a renewed sense of purpose. Izuku looked at his mother, determination shining in his eyes. Let's go, Mom. It's time to make this official. They left their apartment. The bustling city of Musudafu seemed to welcome them with its familiar noise and energy. Izuku walked with a newfound confidence, knowing that his path was clearer, and his abilities recognized. Inko walked beside him, her heart full of pride and support. As Izuku and Inko walked down the street toward the city hall, deeply focused on their next steps and the future ahead, they were completely unaware of the figure watching them from the sidewalk. A boy with bright red wings, his face contorted in a sneer, observed the scene with disgust and disbelief. His eyes narrowed as he observed Izuku and his mother, wondering to himself if Deku had been deceiving everyone all along. Seconds later, he ran off to an unknown destination, determined to share what he had seen with his friends. 22 Chapter 7, The Abyss Within. Hello, dear readers. Welcome to the 7th chapter of The Force Awakens. Not quite TM, as that one is property of Disney. In the second to last chapter of the first arc of the FIC, Izuku Midoriya's origins. Yeah, I know I forgot to add that in the previous chapter, but hey, I'm only human, what did you expect? Buckle up, because this is going to be a hell of a ride. Anyway, I'll respond to your reviews now. Alexander M0RNING star. Thanks for the review, my dude. Izuku's hero costume will likely be a blend of the traditional Jedi robe and elements from his canon suit, though I haven't decided yet. Optimus Prime the 13th. Thanks for the review, my dude. The Jedi mind trick. Absolutely, I've even planned the moment in my draft. Plo Koon's electric judgment is in there too, though I haven't decided when exactly to introduce it. Pigeon King. Nice to read you, man. That's exactly what I thought when writing Leia's introduction scene. Izuku goes 10 years of his life without a quirk, then suddenly develops one that breaks his body and gives him 7 more quirks, and nobody in canon even bats an eye. Then, when they finally find out, it's like, oh well, no big deal, carry on. Dennis Spiral Flame 55, nice to read you again, my dude. I'm excited for chapter 7 too, so I've been eager to get there quickly, haha. This chapter introduces the last Force ghost in the story, but I won't say more, I want you to discover it for yourself. I enjoy answering reviews, it feels great knowing this FIC is getting so much support from all of you. In canon, there were several reasons for why she said that to Izuku, which added to her character's complexity. But in this FIC, she totally believes in him, she's his #1 fan. I'll probably add more mother-son bonding moments here and there. I like Shinso too. Funny enough, replacing Mineta was my first idea, but I quickly discarded it. They do that in so many stories, maybe not all, but the majority. I've got my own twist planned for when we get to UA, and I think you guys are gonna like it. Yup, I needed a girl on the team and an outsider's perspective, as she isn't your traditional Jedi. As for Vader, you'll have to see for yourself in this chapter. I'm looking forward to your review. The Cult of Personality, thanks for your review, dude. I like the Force Unleashed as much as the next guy, but Izuku probably won't be pulling a Starkiller anytime soon. Mainly because Star Destroyers don't exist on the MHA universe, haha. I highly recommend that when you reach that scene you'll know which one you listened to, Anakin's betrayal, from episode 3. Let me know what you think after. With that out of the way, I leave you with the chapter. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please leave a review and all that good stuff. See you at the end. PD 0810. I corrected a minor spelling error here. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas, Lucasfilm, and the multi-billion-dollar corporation. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay. Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues like All Might. The most dangerous beast is the beast within. Chapter 7, The Abyss Within. The early afternoon sun of September filtered through the windows of the classroom, casting long shadows on the desks. The faint hum of insects outside mixed with the muted murmurs of students, creating an eerie stillness. Katsuki Bakugo sat at the edge of his seat, his face contorted into a scowl as the red-winged extra, Tsubasa, relayed the latest news. The normally energetic classroom was unnaturally quiet, the other students sensing the storm brewing in the corner where Bakugo and his friends sat. Seriously? You're telling me that Deku went to the quirk registry and changed his status? Katsuki's voice was low and dangerous, barely containing his fury. His hands clenched into tight fists, knuckles white with the pressure. Yeah, I saw him myself, Tsubasa confirmed, his tone heavy with the weight of the information. He's been hiding something big, and now he's revealing it. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, a storm of anger brewing behind them. So, he's been pretending to be weak all this time. He slammed his fist on the desk, causing a few students to flinch. The sound reverberated through the silent room. That little bastard. He's been looking down on me, thinking he's so much better than everyone else. His friends exchanged uneasy glances, feeling the tension in the air. Katsuki's rage was palpable, his frustration boiling over. I bet he's been laughing behind my back, he continued, his voice rising. And now he's trying to make a fool out of me. I'm the strongest here. Everyone knows it, and they look up to me. If people find out he's stronger or has some secret power, I'm going to lose everything. Katsuki's fear of losing his status as the top hero in training, his unshakable position as the best, tormented him. Memories of his past with Izuku flashed through his mind, their childhood, the times he had belittled Deku for being quirkless. The thought of being overshadowed, of losing the firm support of his teachers and the respect of his classmates, drove him further into a furious frenzy. I won't let him get away with this. He roared, his voice echoing in the silent room. I need to show everyone that I'm still the best. I need to take him down before he ruins everything I've worked for. Tsubasa nodded, a smirk of satisfaction crossing his face as he observed Bakugo's reaction. So, what's the plan? We'll hit him where it hurts, Katsuki said, his voice cold and calculated now. We wait. We let him think he's safe. Then, when he's least expecting it, we attack. That quirkless nobody will regret ever trying to be better than me. Katsuki's mind raced, plotting their next moves with ruthless precision. His frustration, fear, and anger swirled together, fueling his determination to reclaim his position and make sure Deku paid for daring to challenge his superiority. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, Katsuki stood abruptly, his rage still simmering. Let's get to work, he commanded, his voice sharp. We've got a plan to execute. His friends hurried to follow, their faces a mix of fear and anticipation. Just as Katsuki churned with anger, Izuku sat in another class, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. The Force Awakens. The final bell of the school day rang, echoing through the hallways as students poured out of classrooms and into the bustling corridors. Izuku Midoriya gathered his things with a sense of quiet satisfaction. As he packed his backpack, his hand brushed against a small, worn notebook tucked inside. It was his training journal, filled with sketches and notes about the various techniques he was learning from the Force ghosts. Flipping through the pages, Izuku was reminded of the past 2 weeks. He recalled the rigorous cycle of practice and refinement. His nights and weekends had been consumed with training, meditation and learning to harness the Force in ways he had never imagined. The journal held a record of his progress, observations, and moments of breakthrough. Master Anakin's teachings had been transformative. The once disjointed Force pushes and pulls had become more refined, though still basic. As he walked through the bustling schoolyard, the familiar chatter of classmates blended into a background hum. His thoughts wandered to the training sessions with his master. The training had been tiring, but the results were solid. He had learned to focus his energy, channeling the Force with greater control. The exercises had become second nature, and the concepts of Force push and pull were becoming more intuitive. The warm sun cast shadows across the schoolyard as Izuku walked towards the exit. His mind was absorbed in recalling Master Anakin's guidance. Feel the Force flow through you, let it guide your movements. He practiced the techniques in his mind, visualizing the movements as he walked. Just as he approached the school gate, a sudden chill ran down his spine. The Force, his ever-present guide, spoke in a whisper that echoed in his mind, "Danger approaches. Be on guard." Without warning, one of Katsuki's friends, a skinny kid with extended fingers, shot forward with a swift, whip-like motion. His quirk, which allowed him to prolong his fingers like tendrils, reached out toward Izuku. Reacting quickly, the Padawan leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. The fingers crashed into the pavement, leaving a deep crack where they had struck. As he rolled to his feet, Izuku recalled his master's lessons. Use the Force to anticipate your opponent's moves, Anakin's voice echoed in his mind. The memory of their training sessions where Anakin had drilled him in sensing and reacting to unseen threats, came rushing back. He'd trained hard to master these skills, and now he needed them more than ever. Before he could fully regain his balance, Katsuki and the others closed in. Explosions erupted around him as the blonde kid unleashed a series of powerful blasts. Izuku ducked and rolled, using the basic telekinetic pushes and pulls he had been practicing to deflect the blasts and keep his footing. Push and pull with precision. Don't just react, control the flow of the battle. His master had advised during their sessions. Each explosion rattled the ground, but Izuku's new skills allowed him to anticipate and evade, albeit barely. Amidst the chaos, Katsuki's voice cut through the air, full of anger and accusation. "So, you think you're hot stuff now, huh? Always looking down on us like you're better just because you've got some new trick up your sleeve. Did you think we wouldn't find out? You've been hiding a quirk all this time, playing us for fools." Katsuki's eyes blazed with fury as he unleashed another blast, his frustration boiling over. The green-haired Padawan dodged another blast, his mind racing as he processed Katsuki's words. The revelation struck him like a physical blow. He had hoped to keep his training a secret, but now his former friend was confronting him. Trying to keep his composure, he shouted back, "I've always had a quirk. I told you, it's a rare one that I barely knew how to control. This is just a late manifestation of it." Katsuki's face twisted into a snarl. "Don't lie to me. You think you're so special, using that excuse to look down on us. You've been playing us all along, acting like you're above everyone else." The schoolyard turned into a chaotic battlefield. The Force guided Izuku's movements, whispering urgent advice in his ear. But as the battle raged on, there was a subtle shift in the whispers. Where once they had been clear and guiding, they now carried a darker edge, growing more insistent and intense. The anger in the air seemed to seep into the Force itself, distorting its once familiar calm. "Feel the energy around you. Let it guide your actions." Anakin's instructions played out in his memory. The elongated fingers tried to ensnare him again, but he deflected them with a swift push, sending them crashing into a nearby wall. Izuku's training had made him more aware of his surroundings, and he used every bit of his enhanced senses to keep up with the onslaught. Your strength is not just physical. It comes from within. Focus your mind and harness the power of the Force. His master's voice echoed again as he executed a series of precise movements to avoid incoming attacks. Despite his efforts, Izuku was being overwhelmed. He barely managed to fend off a series of attacks from the remaining friends, who took turns launching coordinated assaults. Their attacks were relentless, but Izuku, driven by the guidance of the Force, held his ground. The once familiar faces of his classmates were now twisted into expressions of hostility and aggression. "Stay still, Deku," Katsuki roared, his voice laced with fury. "Quit dodging around and own up, you little shit. You think you're so much better than us, hiding your quirk and pretending like you're something." Izuku's breath came in ragged gasps as he deflected another of Katsuki's explosive blasts. His vision was a blur of movement and energy. As the darkness in the force subtly intensified around him, he found himself reacting more fiercely. The warm, controlled power he'd used to protect himself was now tinged with a sharp edge. "Why should I?" Izuku shouted back, his voice rising with frustration. "The world doesn't revolve around you, Katsuki. I didn't owe you anything. You're the one who's always been so wrapped up in being the strongest. You were the one that made my life so miserable. Who do you think you are to demand anything from me?" Katsuki's face twisted with rage, his eyes burning with a mixture of shock and fury. "Miserable? I made your life miserable. You think you're the only one who's had a hard time. Everyone's got their struggles, Deku." His voice was hoarse and filled with bitter resentment. "I don't give a damn about your sob story. You're just trying to play the victim because you're too weak to stand up on your own." The intensity of the battle escalated. As Katsuki's friends pressed their attacks, Izuku's responses grew more aggressive. His force abilities, once a source of protection, began to reflect his mounting frustration. The once clear guidance of the force was now interspersed with darker currents, subtly guiding him toward more ruthless tactics. Katsuki took a menacing step closer, his fists clenched tightly. "You think you're better than everyone else just because you've got some hidden power. That's what this is all about, isn't it? You think you're special now that you're hiding behind this quirk of yours." His voice cracked with intensity. "You're nothing but a pathetic coward, trying to make excuses for your own weaknesses." Izuku's eyes flared with a dangerous intensity as he heard the venomous words. His anger, previously simmering, erupted violently. The force, once a calm and guiding presence, now roared in his mind, feeding on his rage. "Show them what happens when they cross you." It seemed to whisper with an unsettling urgency. His power surged, the air around him crackling with raw energy. He moved with a speed and force that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. The force's darker currents began to overpower his previous restraint. Izuku's attacks became more brutal, more driven by his fury than by any sense of control or compassion. The schoolyard was filled with chaos as Katsuki and his friends struggled to keep up with Izuku's relentless assault. What had once been a harmless force push now carried a menacing power, sending all of his attackers sprawling, leaving only the blonde standing. The rest of his friends lay unconscious on the ground, scattered around the schoolyard. Every thrust and movement from Izuku were fueled by a deepening darkness within him. Katsuki, his face twisted with a mix of rage and something darker, tried to strike a decisive blow. "You think you're so tough now, don't you?" he roared, his voice laced with contempt. "You're pathetic. It's your fault your family's in ruins. Your dad leaving your mom, leaving her to struggle while you're just a burden to her. You think you're worth anything. You're just a piece of trash, dragging her down." His words were like daggers, each one piercing deeper into Izuku's psyche. Enraged, Katsuki launched himself at Izuku. With a fierce yell, he unleashed a powerful explosion from his hands, the force of which burned dangerously close to Izuku. Izuku barely had time to react as the explosion singed the edge of his Padawan braid, the once sacred symbol of his connection to the Force. The sight of the burning braid, the representation of his bond with his mentors, his status as Master Anakin's apprentice, ignited a storm of emotions within him. The explosion not only physically assaulted Izuku but also struck at his heart, making him feel the weight of Katsuki's accusations more deeply. The rage and dark energy that had been building within him surged uncontrollably, amplifying his sense of betrayal and pain. "Is that all you've got?" Katsuki's voice cut through the chaos. "You're nothing. A loser, just like everyone said." Izuku's eyes, now reflecting the dark turmoil within him, locked onto Katsuki. The Force, sensing the intense negativity and fueling his anger, urged him to finish what he had started. Kill them all for their insolence." His control slipped further as he felt the darkness wrapping around him, pushing him to exact retribution. The whispers of the Force grew louder, becoming a cacophony of dark commands. Izuku, blinded by his anger and the surge of power, barely registered the chaotic swirl of emotions and the rush of dark energy enveloping him. Katsuki, panting heavily and glaring defiantly, continued to provoke Izuku. "What's wrong, Deku?" Scared to face the truth, he shouted, his voice filled with a mix of desperation and disdain. "You think you're so special now with your quirk? You're just a pathetic coward, hiding behind your powers." Izuku's grip on his emotions faltered further. "Shut up," he roared, his voice filled with rage and anguish. His focus narrowed, his eyes locked onto Katsuki with a chilling intensity. The darkness within him reached its peak, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. With a deep, ragged breath, he raised his hand, fingers splayed out. The darkness surged, responding to his command with palpable energy. His palm faced Katsuki, and an invisible force began to coil tightly around the blonde kid. Katsuki's eyes widened in panic as he felt an invisible grip tightening around his throat, the air being painfully squeezed from his lungs. Izuku's face was a mask of cold hate, the shadows of the force swirling around him like a storm of black energy. The technique, now fully embraced by the dark side, was like a noose tightening with inexorable force. The grip was not merely physical but a powerful, crushing pressure that seemed to warp the very space around the blonde's neck. The energy flowed from Izuku's hand, a dark tendril of force power that constricted mercilessly. Katsuki's struggles became more desperate, his hands clawing at his throat, gasping for air. His face flushed red, then began to take on a bluish hue as the life drained from him. The dark energy surrounding the green-haired boy surged with malevolent force, pulsing with elation. "Good Izuku, good. Kill him now. Do it." The sinister whisper echoed, mirroring the voice of an insidious, omnipresent shadow. The Force ghosts materialized around the scene, their expressions a mix of horror and desperation. Obi-Wan's face was etched with profound concern, his usually calm demeanor shattered by the sight of Izuku consumed by the dark side. He reached out, trying to penetrate the encroaching darkness with his own Force presence, but the energy was impenetrable, a thick, writhing veil that pushed him back. Yoda's normally serene visage was marred by fear, his small frame trembling as he tried to extend his influence into the swirling abyss. "Stop, this path you must not take," he implored, his voice shaking with both urgency and sorrow. His eyes, usually so wise and composed, were now wide with distress. Leia materialized amidst the chaos, her presence embodying a resolute and steady calm. Her eyes, though filled with compassion, reflected the deep concern she felt as she saw Izuku teetering on the edge of the dark side. She reached out with unwavering determination, her voice cutting through the darkness with a gentle yet firm authority. "Izuku, listen to me. You have the strength to overcome this. You are not alone." Anakin, however, was the most affected, his face a portrait of sheer panic and regret. His hands clenched into tight fists, knuckles white, as he strained against the dark barrier that surrounded Izuku. His eyes were wide, reflecting the turmoil he felt inside. "No, Izuku. Not like this," he shouted, his voice breaking with a mix of anguish and desperation. Anakin's own past failures loomed large in his mind, and seeing his apprentice on the brink of falling into darkness stirred a deep, visceral fear within him. His breath came in ragged gasps, his entire being vibrating with intense, almost frantic energy. Despite their efforts, the ghosts struggled to break through the suffocating darkness. Their spectral forms flickered and wavered as they tried to reach Izuku, their influence unable to penetrate the thick veil of malevolent energy. The darkness seemed to respond to their presence with even greater intensity, amplifying the pressure around Katsuki's throat. Anakin's frustration was palpable, his voice a tormented plea. "You mustn't let it control you, Izuku. Fight it." His desperation grew with every passing second as he fought to reach through the dark barrier, trying to pull his apprentice back from the edge of destruction. As Katsuki crumpled to the ground, unconscious, the chaotic energy of the battle seemed to momentarily still. The darkness that had enveloped Izuku began to pulse with an almost sinister satisfaction, reveling in the pain it had caused. The oppressive aura around him shimmered, as if responding to some unseen force. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. A new ethereal figure appeared, his presence a stark contrast to the dark turmoil surrounding Izuku. Luke Skywalker, with determined yet compassionate eyes, stood tall and resolute. His attire was a simple but unmistakable outfit, a tunic and robe, reminiscent of the classic garb worn by Jedi Knights. The young Jedi's face was set in a calm expression, but his eyes revealed a deep understanding of the struggle Izuku was facing. He moved with a grace that spoke of both inner peace and unwavering resolve. The Force seemed to ripple around him, forming a protective barrier that clashed with the darkness surrounding Izuku. Enough! Luke's voice rang out, clear and commanding, cutting through the oppressive gloom. His words were not just spoken but carried an authoritative weight, a resonance that spoke directly to the core of Izuku's being. The darkness recoiled slightly at his presence, as though recognizing a force beyond its grasp. He stepped forward with deliberate, measured movements, his gaze fixed on his father's Padawan. The light from his presence seemed to push back against the encroaching shadows, creating a space of calm amidst the chaos. The contrast between the bright aura of Luke and the dark energy around Izuku was striking. "You must let go of this anger, Izuku," Luke said, his voice soft but insistent. "This is not who you are meant to be. The darkness is trying to deceive you, to make you think that violence and retribution are the only answers." The boy's hands tightened, the dark energy still swirling around him, but Luke's presence seemed to pierce through the veil of shadow. With a forceful but gentle push, Luke reached out with the force, his own energy creating a ripple that counteracted the dark influence surrounding Izuku. As the darkness began to recede, the tumultuous shadows that had enveloped Izuku started to dissipate, revealing the boy's struggling form beneath. Luke's presence exuded a calming influence, and slowly, the dark energy started to wane, unable to withstand the purity of his light. "Fight it, Izuku. You have the power within you to overcome this," Luke encouraged, his voice steady and reassuring. The young Jedi's words acted as a beacon of hope, guiding Izuku back from the edge of the abyss. The darkness around the boy continued to shrink, retreating under the combined pressure of Luke's presence and the gentle but persistent efforts of the Force ghosts. The oppressive aura that had once seemed so insurmountable began to dissolve, leaving Izuku's mind and heart clearer and more focused. As the final remnants of darkness faded away, the green-haired Padawan collapsed to his knees, exhaustion washing over him. The oppressive energy that had once consumed him was now receding, leaving him physically drained and mentally overwhelmed. His breathing was ragged, and his eyes, wide with shock and horror, scanned the scene around him. Luke Skywalker remained nearby, his presence a calming beacon amidst the aftermath of the turmoil. The young Jedi's gaze was steady, filled with a profound mix of empathy and understanding. He knew the depth of the internal struggle Izuku had faced and the pain that had driven him to the edge. Izuku's eyes darted to the unconscious form of Katsuki lying on the ground, his face pale and bruised. The reality of his actions hit him with a crushing force. The knowledge of how close he had come to crossing an irreversible line, of nearly succumbing to the darkness, left him in a state of sheer horror. His mind raced with fragmented memories of the battle, the suffocating darkness, the command to kill them all, and the almost uncontrollable urge to unleash his anger. He could hardly believe what he had nearly done. The weight of his actions and the terror of his own potential for darkness were too much to bear. Izuku's eyes filled with tears as he looked around, unable to fully comprehend the devastation he had wrought. The overwhelming sense of guilt and fear pushed him into a state of panic. Without a word, he scrambled to his feet, his body trembling with raw emotion. In a frantic, uncontrolled burst, he turned and fled from the schoolyard, running blindly into the night. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he darted down darkened streets and through quiet alleyways, his path erratic and desperate. The city lights blurred past him as he ran, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind of regret and fear. His mind unable to settle on a direction, driven solely by the need to escape. 22 Chapter 8, Duality. Yo! Welcome back to this FIC and its 8th chapter, which also happens to be the final chapter of the first arc, Izuku Midoriya's origins. This is the last chapter where we'll see Izuku as a wee 13-year-old lad. So, expect a slight time skip in the next chapter. Have you noticed that each chapter has more words than the last? At this rate, I'll be writing 30,000 to 40,000 word chapters by the time we reach chapter 30, I hope not. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the first arc of the FIC. Did you like it? Was there something you felt was missing? What was your favorite chapter or moment from the first arc? I'll be eagerly awaiting your reviews. Now I'll respond to the reviews from the previous chapter. Ryuston, thanks for the review, dude. Don't worry, Katsuki isn't dead. As for Toga, from what I understand, her descent into villainy happened after she graduated, which, based on the timeline of this FIC, would have already occurred. Maybe she'll make an appearance before UA, but I haven't decided yet. Iron Slayer Dragon, thanks for the review, and I hope you're still enjoying the FIC. Pigeon King, hey, dude. Nice to read you again. Believe me, I get it, Katsuki was allowed to get away with a lot for years. Things that, if done by anyone else, would have been enough to label them a villain. But that's exactly the point Horikoshi wanted to make about the decay of society in MHA. I completely agree that Izuku should have gone to therapy or at least had regular sessions with Hound Dog, considering he's UA's psychologist. Regarding Katsuki's redemption, there never really was one because, throughout the series, his actions were never seen as wrong, even though he couldn't get away with them anymore at UA. So, there you have it. I hope you enjoy this chapter, and if you do, please leave a review and blah blah blah. See you at the end. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company with the capital D. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay! Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and/or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues like All Might. Without darkness there cannot be light. Chapter 8, Duality. Izuku sprinted away from the schoolyard, his heart pounding like a relentless drumbeat in his chest. Each step echoed his guilt and self-loathing. The city lights flickered faintly in the distance, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance in rhythm with his every desperate stride. The world around him blurred into an indistinct smear, a chaotic whirl of colors and shapes driven by his instinctive urge to escape the devastation he had unleashed. His breaths came in harsh, ragged bursts, each inhalation scraping his throat like shards of glass. The haunting images replayed in his mind with relentless repetition, the uncontrolled surge of his power, Katsuki's horrified expression, and the desperate pleas of his masters. The weight of his actions pressed down on him like an invisible, crushing burden. Tears blurred his vision, turning the world into a distorted landscape of darkness and muted streetlights. The sharp, acrid scent of garbage and decay from the alleyways he passed only deepened his sense of despair. After what felt like hours of running, he stumbled upon a narrow alleyway, a dark, confined space that seemed to offer both sanctuary and imprisonment. The alley's oppressive darkness enveloped him as he staggered inside, nearly collapsing against the cold, rough brick wall. The scattered grime and trash on the ground mirrored his sense of desolation. Izuku slid down the wall, his legs trembling beneath him until he was seated on the grimy pavement. He pulled his knees close to his chest, wrapping his arms around them as if trying to shield himself from the overwhelming weight of his guilt. His tears flowed freely now, mixing with the dirt on his cheeks. He buried his face in his hands, his fingers digging into his skin as if trying to stave off the flood of emotions threatening to drown him. His sobs came in harsh, broken gasps, punctuated by occasional, breathless cries of remorse. Izuku paused for a moment, trying to catch his breath. He leaned against the cool brick wall, feeling the rough texture beneath his fingers. The distant sounds of the city provided a strange, momentary comfort, grounding him in the present before the storm of emotions took over again. "I'm a monster," he choked out, his voice cracking with despair. "How could I? I almost killed Kachan. I'm no better than, I'm a villain." His words were muffled by his hands, but the raw anguish was evident in every syllable. He felt as though he had betrayed every aspiration, every dream he had once held close, each shattered beyond repair. Unseen by him, a soft, shimmering light began to blend around him. The Force, sensing his profound turmoil and the intent behind his emotions, his desperate wish to protect rather than harm, enveloped him in a cocoon of luminous energy. The Force ghosts, sensing his pain and distress, tried to reach out to him, but this protective barrier of light formed an insurmountable divide. They felt his suffering and fear but could not bridge the chasm created by it. Izuku's body shook violently with the force of his tears and sorrow. His hands gripped his hair tightly, fingers tangled in the strands as if trying to pull out the pain, convinced he was unworthy of any support or redemption. His muscles ached from the strain of running and the immense weight of his emotions. Time seemed to slip away, and eventually, his sobs dwindled into quiet, shuddering breaths. He remained huddled in the darkness, feeling utterly alone. The night around him was eerily silent, broken only by his ragged breathing and the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. The world outside continued on, oblivious to his suffering, while he remained a solitary figure in the dim alley, struggling to find solace amidst his anguish. The Force Awakens. Hitoshi Shinso felt an inexplicable pull drawing him toward a narrow alleyway as he made his way home from the store. The city's vibrant colors and bustling noise seemed to fade, replaced by a growing sense of urgency that quickened his steps. His heart beat with a strange meaning, each streetlight casting brief glimmers that only added to his mounting concern. It was as if an unseen hand was guiding him to that exact spot. As he approached the alley, the world narrowed to a single point of focus. The usual hum of the city seemed distant, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed against his ears. The alley was cloaked in darkness, its grimy walls and scattered trash starkly contrasting with the warm, almost magical glow emanating from within. The blinking streetlights outside cast long, dancing shadows that played against the walls, creating an eerie, shifting dance of light and dark. When Hitoshi finally reached the alley, his breath caught in his throat. There, hunched against the wall, was Izuku Midoriya, enveloped in a soft, ethereal light. The green-haired pre-teen's figure was barely visible through the haze of tears and the glowing aura, creating an almost surreal image. Hitoshi's heart clenched at the sight of his friend so vulnerable and distressed. A wave of empathy washed over him, he could feel the weight of Izuku's turmoil almost physically, tightening around his chest. Without hesitation, the brainwasher moved closer, his footsteps cautious but determined. He saw the trash on the ground that spoke of neglect, but his focus remained on his green-haired friend. Hitoshi paused a few feet away, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves before approaching further. He allowed himself a moment to observe Izuku's distress, letting the sight sink in before intervening. Midoriya. His voice was gentle but carried an undertone of concern, trembling slightly with the worry he felt. "Hey, what happened? Are you okay?" Izuku flinched at the sound of Hitoshi's voice, his body tensing as if bracing for impact. He looked up slowly, his tear-streaked face illuminated by the eerie glow, and his eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and shame. Shinso, why you shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice breaking. I might hurt you." Seeing the raw distress in his friend's eyes, the purple-haired pre-teen's frustration flared, mingled with a deep concern that pierced through his usual calm demeanor. He knelt beside the Padawan, ignoring the damp and grime beneath him. "I'm not going anywhere," he declared, his tone resolute. "You're my friend, and I'm here to help you, no matter what." The green-haired shook his head vigorously, the light around him flickering with his agitation. "No, you don't understand. I almost killed Kachan. I lost control, and the power it consumed me. I'm dangerous. I'm a monster." Hitoshi's concern deepened, mixed with an urgent frustration. He could see Izuku spiraling deeper into self-loathing, and it pained him to see his friend like this. "Listen, Midoriya," he said, his voice softening as he tried to reach the core of Izuku's anguish. "You're not a monster. You're a person who's made a mistake. Even heroes lose control sometimes. Look at Endeavor. He's a top hero, but he's had moments where he's lost control. It doesn't make him a villain." Izuku's shoulders shook with silent sobs, his breath coming in uneven, ragged bursts. "Why you don't know what it's like," he said, his voice trembling. "The fear, the guilt, it's overwhelming. I can't handle it." Hitoshi's frustration grew, fueled by his deep concern and a sense of betrayal. He remembered their first interaction when Izuku had spoken about not judging others for their quirks and how even the most misunderstood powers could be used for good. Now, seeing his friend dismiss his own advice, his patience snapped. "Midoriya," he said, his voice edged with disbelief, "was everything you told me about your dreams and your determination a lie?" The green-haired pre-teen's eyes widened with confusion and pain, his earlier sobs subsiding as he absorbed the brainwasher's words. But I." The brainwasher cut him off, his voice growing sharper, slicing through the gloom with a new edge. "Tell me, Midoriya, was everything a lie? Are you really that much of a hypocrite? You told me that a quirk wasn't inherently evil, that it's how you use it that matters. And now you're here, drowning in guilt and self-loathing because you lost control for a moment." Izuku's eyes widened in shock, his previous sobs fading into stunned silence. I didn't mean to." Hitoshi's voice grew firmer, a sense of urgency threading through his words. "If you truly believed in what you told me, then don't just sit here feeling sorry for yourself. Get up and do something about it. Don't let it control you now. If you believe what you said, you need to take responsibility and act. Don't drown in despair. Face this challenge and work on mastering your powers. Hiding away won't solve anything. It might just turn you into the very thing you're afraid of." The Padawan's hands trembled as he clutched his knees tighter. But the guilt, the fear of what I could do. Hitoshi's tone softened but remained resolute. Guilt and fear are tough, but isolating yourself won't help. You need to confront these feelings and strive to control your abilities. It's about taking action, not succumbing to the dark thoughts. You're not a monster, you're someone who's seeking to make things right. Monsters don't seek redemption nor question their actions, but you do. Izuku's mind raced in the weight of his mistakes. His friend's words began to dissolve the fog of his despair, offering a glimpse of light where there had only been darkness. "Thank you, Shinso," he whispered, his voice filled with a fragile sense of hope. "Thank you for not giving up on me." The brainwasher's expression softened into a warm, encouraging smile, though his eyes still held a trace of frustration. "That's what friends are for, idiot. But you need to do your part too. I can't fight this battle for you." Izuku nodded, his expression reflecting a mix of gratitude and lingering remorse. "You should go home now. I'll be okay. I promise." The purple-haired pre-teen's eyes narrowed slightly, skepticism evident in his gaze. "Is that really how it's going to be? You expect me to just walk away after what I've seen? You're telling me you'll be okay, but everything about you right now screams otherwise." Izuku shifted uncomfortably, his hands still clutching his knees. I need some time alone to sort things out. I can't keep dragging everyone into my mess." Hitoshi shook his head, annoyance in his voice. "You're not dragging anyone down by accepting help. Everything I said wasn't to push you away or doubt you. I'm saying it because I believe in what you're capable of. But you have to believe in it too. You've got to take this chance to show that you're more than your mistakes." Izuku looked up, meeting Hitoshi's gaze with weariness. "I understand what you're saying. I really do. And I appreciate it more than you know. I just need to prove to myself that I can handle this. I don't want to let anyone down." His friend's expression softened, as he observed the Padawan's struggle, though his skepticism remained. He opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden, inexplicable feeling of calm washed over him. He felt a deep sense of reassurance, almost as if everything would turn out okay. The brainwasher hesitated. "I want to believe that, I really do. But something just tells me you'll be alright. Even though I don't fully understand why, I have this feeling that you'll find your way." His voice wavered slightly, betraying his own uncertainty but underscoring his sincerity. He looked at his friend with a final, earnest gaze. "No matter what happens, remember this, we're friends. I'll always be here for you. No matter how tough things get, you're not alone." Izuku nodded, a faint, grateful smile breaking through his pain. "Thank you, Shinso. I can't tell you how much that means to me. I promise I'll work through this. I'll be okay." Hitoshi gave a small, reassuring smile and turned to leave, his steps echoing softly in the quiet alley. The street lamps flickered as he walked away, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the night. As he walked away, he glanced back one last time, feeling a deep sense of relief. Izuku watched the brainwasher disappear around the corner. The weight of his guilt still pressed heavily on his shoulders, but Hitoshi's words had sparked a glimmer of hope within him. With a deep, steadying breath, Izuku stood up, feeling the cool night air against his face. He took a final, reflective glance at the alley, noting the way the dim light played on the uneven ground, before walking away. The Force Awakens. The night was thick with the scent of the sea as Izuku Midoriya wandered along the grim expanse of Takoba Beach. The stars above shone with a distant, ethereal light, casting a faint glow that shimmered on the restless waves. The beach, strewn with debris, seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness, its remnants of past neglect a stark reflection of his inner turmoil. Each step he took felt heavy, the ground beneath him uneven and treacherous. The remnants of discarded items and rusty metal crunched underfoot, echoing his sense of being lost. The weight of his guilt, compounded by Hitoshi's words, seemed almost palpable, pressing down on him with every step. He found a secluded spot behind a heap of scrap metal, partially shielded from the distant city lights and prying eyes. There, he sank down onto the cold, uneven ground, his stained jacket, offering little comfort against the biting chill of the night air. The jacket, once a symbol of warmth and security, now felt like a mere scrap of fabric, barely adequate against the cold that seemed to seep into his bones. Exhaustion weighed heavily on him, his body and mind both worn from the day's emotional catastrophe. As he lay down, trying to find a measure of rest amidst the wreckage, the night stretched on, unyielding and cold. The distant sound of waves crashing against the shore added to his sense of isolation, while a chilly wind whispered through the debris, enhancing the desolate atmosphere. His sleep was fitful and troubled, his dreams a chaotic reflection of the turmoil that had driven him to this desolate place. In the depths of his troubled slumber, Izuku found himself transported to a surreal realm, a place where shifting lights and shadows played across an ever-changing landscape. The oppressive darkness of the beach was replaced by a swirling, luminous void, filled with an ethereal glow and deep, mysterious shadows. At the heart of this strange world stood a cloaked figure, its form bathed in a gentle, encompassing light that contrasted sharply with the surrounding darkness. Confused and frightened, Izuku tried to move away from the figure, but an invisible force held him in place. "Where am I? What is this?" he stammered, his voice echoing strangely in the surreal environment. The figure's voice, calm and soothing, resonated with a profound sense of authority. "You have been brought here to understand. Your actions had led you to this moment." Izuku struggled against the pull of the realm, his attempts to escape only drawing him closer to the figure. "I don't want to be here," he said, his voice trembling with anxiety. "I don't understand what's happening." The Force figure spoke with a gentle, yet firm tone. "I am the Force, a singular entity embodying both light and darkness. I am not merely a guide but a unity that encompasses both the potential for great good and profound evil." The dreamscape shifted, revealing a series of vivid, hauntingly beautiful visions that unfolded around Izuku. Each vision was a fragment of a grand, intricate tapestry depicting the Force's impact on various worlds and lives. He saw a serene garden filled with lush greenery and ancient temples. The atmosphere was calm, the air scented with blooming flowers as Jedi in simple robes moved gracefully among the gardens, their actions smooth and deliberate. The scene exuded a sense of peace and order, with soft golden light illuminating the surroundings. Yet, beyond this tranquility, dark storm clouds began to gather on the horizon, a faint hint of impending conflict. Izuku's eyes widened as he took in the beauty and calm of the garden. The contrast between the serenity and the impending storm unsettled him. Is this a place of peace? He wondered aloud. But why is there darkness on the horizon? This was the Garden of the Jedi from the era of the Old Republic. A place where the Jedi sought to balance the light and dark within themselves. However, even in such a place, shadows of conflict and darkness could not be entirely avoided. The balance is delicate, and peace is often tested. The vision shifted to a desolate, scarred landscape, strewn with remnants of ancient, shattered structures. The air was thick with dust, and the sky was a turbulent mix of dark clouds and sporadic lightning. The remnants of past battles lay scattered, a silent testament to a fierce conflict that had left the land in ruin, which spoke of both the power and the cost of unchecked aggression. Izuku's heart sank as he surveyed the devastation. The wreckage and destruction were overwhelming, filling him with a sense of dread. "This place," he said, his voice trembling. "How could something so terrible happen? Here, you witness the aftermath of the Sith Wars on Malachor V," the Force continued, its tone somber. The devastation left in the wake of such a conflict was profound. The Sith's pursuit of power led to great destruction. This reflects the consequences of allowing the darkness within to dominate, leaving behind a landscape marred by violence and loss. Izuku saw the inside of a grand, ancient hall where shadows and light clashed in a storm of movement. Figures moved through the space in a frenetic dance of energy and conflict, their forms a blur of motion and color. The hall was now a battleground where ideologies collided violently. He watched the chaotic battle with wide eyes, the ferocity of the conflict striking him deeply. This was once a place of learning. He asked in disbelief. How could it come to this? This was the Temple of Coruscant during the great conflict between the Jedi and Sith, the Force explained. The Jedi and Sith clashed in a struggle for dominance. The once sacred halls became a place of battle, between the forces of light and darkness. Such moments are a reminder that the struggle for balance is often fought in the heart of what should be sacred. The final vision showed a figure wrestling with an internal storm, beginning in a place of light and hope. Gradually, the figure was consumed by darkness, their path shifting to a darker realm. But then, there was a transition to a moment of reflection and struggle. The figure fought to return to the light, their journey marked by hardship but also by a genuine effort to make amends and find redemption. Izuku's gaze followed the figure's tumultuous journey, his own struggles reflecting in the figure's battle. "Is it possible to come back from the darkness?" he asked quietly. "Can someone truly change?" "This is the tale of Revan," the Force's voice softened with compassion and reverence. A warrior who fell to darkness but sought redemption. His journey reflects the possibility of recovery and growth, even after falling into the shadows. It demonstrates that even those who have lost their way can strive to return to the light, learning and evolving from their experiences. The visions ended as the Force's voice continued. The Force is not separate from these dualities. Many have struggled with their inner darkness, losing control and causing harm. Yet, they are not defined solely by their failures. Growth comes from confronting these challenges and understanding oneself. Izuku watched in awe and trepidation. The realization that the Force itself was a blend of opposing aspects offered him a new perspective on his own internal struggles. The Force's message, that it was both light and darkness, offered him a glimpse of hope amid his confusion. As the vision faded and the ethereal realm dissolved into darkness, he felt a lingering sense of introspection. The lessons from the Force were profound, and though he was still troubled, he now carried a flicker of understanding and a renewed sense of contemplation. The cold, gritty texture of the beach beneath him, the salty tang of the sea air, and the distant sound of waves crashing added to the surreal feeling of waking from such a dream. The green-haired preteen slowly awoke on the grimy beach. The first light of dawn was starting to filter through the heaps of debris, casting long shadows that danced with the early morning light. The shift from the dream's vivid colors and sensations to the bleak, muted reality was jarring, yet it grounded him. Izuku sat up, his mind still reeling from the dream's revelations. Though the insights about the Force had not provided immediate answers, they had given him something to contemplate. As he looked out at the beach, now bathed in the pale light of early morning, he found a new sense of clarity amidst the desolation. The Force Awakens. Izuku sat cross-legged surrounded by the wreckage attempting to meditate. The remnants of the night's vision still swirled in his mind. His posture was stoic, but inside, he was a tempest of conflicting emotions. He closed his eyes, seeking clarity and peace. The weight of the previous night's revelations was heavy on his mind, like a dense fog that clung to him. The visions from the Force replayed in his thoughts, their meanings and implications swirling around him like the restless waves. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and uncertainty that clung to him. The tranquil silence of his meditation was abruptly broken as a familiar presence filled the space around him. Izuku sensed a change in the air, the subtle hum of energy indicating the arrival of someone significant. Slowly, he opened his eyes and saw Anakin Skywalker materializing before him, his spectral form emanating a gentle, reassuring glow. The sight of his master brought him a mix of relief and dread. Izuku's heart sank. He bowed his head, unable to meet Anakin's gaze, fearing that his master was deeply disappointed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice heavy with shame. "I didn't live up to your expectations." To his astonishment, Anakin stepped closer and enveloped him in a warm, comforting embrace. The sensation was unexpected but soothing, a palpable relief that seemed to flow from Anakin himself. He felt a comforting warmth, contrasting sharply with his own turmoil, as if the last weights of his guilt were being lifted. "Why?" Izuku's voice trembled. "After what I've done. Why are you so kind to me?" His master's voice was steady and filled with understanding that only someone who had walked a similar path could convey. "I know what it's like to fall into darkness," he said softly. "I have made my own mistakes, far greater than you can imagine. I failed to redeem myself for a long time and caused immense pain, not only to the galaxy but to those I loved most." Anakin's eyes grew distant as he began his tale. "When I was young, I fought to protect the galaxy, but my fear and anger began to cloud my judgment. I was consumed by a sense of power and the fear of losing those I loved." Izuku listened, his breath catching as Anakin's voice grew darker with memory. The struggle of trying to reconcile his own sense of failure with the enormity of Anakin's past was almost overwhelming. His heart ached as he imagined the young, idealistic Jedi who fell so far from grace. He could feel his master's remorse seeping into him, a heavy sadness that resonated with his own fears and regrets. "I was manipulated by Chancellor Palpatine," his master continued, "who promised me the power to save those I cared about. I was seduced by the dark side of the Force and became Darth Vader. My fall was swift and terrible. I turned against my friends and allies, enforcing the Emperor's tyranny across the galaxy." Anakin's voice trembled with the weight of his confession. "As Vader, I led the purge of the Jedi Order, hunting down my former comrades and friends. I became a symbol of fear and oppression. My actions led to the suffering of countless innocents. I was lost, my heart hardened by rage and regret. But even in the darkest moments, there was a glimmer of the man I once was." Izuku's eyes widened with the gravity of his master's story. As Anakin recounted his fall from grace, Izuku felt a tumultuous storm brewing within him. Part of him recoiled in horror, grappling with the image of Anakin as Darth Vader, the enforcer of tyranny and the purger of the Jedi. The vivid descriptions of oppression and betrayal struck him like icy daggers, causing his stomach to churn and his breath to catch. He could hardly reconcile the gentle presence of his master with the dark figure of his past. Yet, beneath that horror, another part of him stirred with deep compassion. He remembered Anakin's earlier words, his fear, his vulnerability, and the manipulative shadows of the Chancellor that had clouded his judgment. This understanding softened the harsh edges of his revulsion. The realization that his master had been twisted by external forces, that the darkness had not come from within him alone, prompted a rush of empathy. The same fear that had driven Anakin to seek power and control now mirrored Izuku's own fears of failure and inadequacy. Izuku's heart ached as he processed this complex interplay of emotions. The horror of Anakin's past was intertwined with a deep sorrow for the man who had fallen so far yet had found his way back. It was a reminder of the fragility of the human spirit, and it ignited a flicker of hope in Izuku's chest. If someone as powerful and respected as Anakin could falter and still seek redemption, perhaps there was hope for him too. The storm of feelings left Izuku trembling, his eyes moist with the weight of his own internal conflict. He grappled with the duality of his emotions, revolted by the acts of his master but moved by the man's sincere remorse and his struggle for redemption. The realization that Anakin had been a victim of manipulation, as well as his own choices, created a jarring but hopeful dichotomy within him. Izuku's voice trembled as he tried to express the chaotic mix of emotions swirling inside him. I'm horrified by what you did. I can hardly believe that someone I've looked up to could do such things. But I also see now how much you've suffered, and it makes me want to believe that redemption is possible, even for me. Anakin's expression softened, a look of understanding and deep empathy reflecting in his eyes. I blamed myself for many things, he continued. I didn't tell you this before because I was afraid that you'd see me as a monster, that you'd reject me. But the truth is, he said, his voice steady and filled with a hint of nostalgia, the one who helped me find my way back was my son, Luke. Even after all I had done, despite the darkness I had spread across the galaxy, he never gave up on me. His belief in me, his refusal to see me as just a villain, was the beacon that guided me back to the light. Izuku listened intently, his gaze fixed on Anakin as if trying to piece together the full picture of his master's journey. Luke saw something in you that you couldn't see in yourself, he said softly. Yes, Anakin replied, a small, almost wistful smile touching his lips. He believed in the good that still existed within me, even when I was consumed by darkness. He saw me not just as Darth Vader, but as Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi I once was. It was his faith that gave me the strength to confront my own demons and seek redemption. As Izuku absorbed Anakin's words, a realization began to dawn on him. He looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the serene presence of Luke Skywalker, who had brought him from the dark before it was too late. Master, Izuku began, his voice tinged with awe and curiosity, Luke's presence. It wasn't just a chance occurrence, was it? Anakin's eyes met Izuku's with a mixture of pride and understanding. No, he said softly. He meant to guide you, just as his belief once guided me. Izuku's mind whirred with this new understanding, feeling a shiver run down his spine. The realization was both comforting and profound. Then the spectral figures of Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa appeared on the beach. Their forms glowed softly, a serene light that added to the ethereal atmosphere. Luke's form shimmered with a calm strength, while Leia's presence exuded a gentle but unwavering resolve. They approached Izuku with expressions of empathy and sorrow. Luke spoke first, his voice calm and steady. Izuku, your journey is not unlike mine and my father's. There are shadows within us all, and facing them is part of what makes us whole. I see the same potential for light in you that I once saw in my father. Your struggle is real, but it does not define you. Leia stepped forward, her gaze warm yet firm. Forgiveness and redemption are not just about absolving past sins, they are about choosing to move forward, to become better. I took time to forgive my father, but in doing so, I learned that even those who have made grave mistakes can still find a path back to the light. Izuku's heart ached as he listened to their words. He could feel the weight of their experiences pressing on him, mingling with his own turmoil. He turned his gaze from the Force ghosts to Anakin, his eyes searching for reassurance. So, if I'm facing darkness within myself, how do I find my way back? How do I hold on to hope when it feels like it's slipping away? Anakin's expression softened, a deep empathy reflecting in his eyes. The path to redemption is not a straight line. It's a journey filled with challenges and moments of doubt. But it is in these moments that we must hold on to the belief that there is light within us. Luke nodded, his gaze steady. And it's not just about finding the light within yourself, but also accepting that others see it in you. Sometimes, the belief of those who care about us can become a guiding light when our own vision is clouded. Leia's voice carried a soothing tone as she added, "The Force connects all of us. It binds us together and helps us find our way, even when we feel isolated. You're never truly alone in your struggle, and there are always paths to healing if you're willing to seek them." Izuku's thoughts swirled as he absorbed their wisdom. He could feel a deep sense of connection with Anakin's past and the guidance being offered by Luke and Leia. The burden of his own mistakes and doubts began to feel lighter, as though the presence of the Force ghosts was helping him to see a path through the darkness. As the wind gently stirred the sand around them, Izuku's resolve began to solidify. He looked at the spectral figures with a new sense of determination. He began to reflect on the words of his friend Hitoshi, the lessons imparted by the Force, and the stories shared by his Force ghost masters. He stood up with a mixed expression of acceptance and newfound hope. "I will carry these mistakes with me," he declared. "And if you allow me to be your apprentice again, I will strive to be a Jedi and a hero that makes you proud. This braid," he said, touching the remaining part of his Padawan braid, "will be a reminder of how much I still have to learn and of my commitment to improving." The spectral figures of Anakin, Luke, and Leia gathered around Izuku, placing their hands on his shoulders in a gesture of unwavering support and unity. Their ethereal presence created a cocoon of warmth and comfort around him. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda materialized beside Anakin, their forms shimmering softly against the backdrop of twilight. Kenobi's apparition radiated a calm and composed aura, his eyes reflecting a profound wisdom and reassurance. His presence was a quiet testament to the enduring strength of the Jedi spirit. Yoda, the Grand Master, exuded an air of timeless resilience, his small, wise figure standing as a beacon of hope and fortitude. Together, they formed a circle of guidance, their unity a powerful symbol of their continued belief in Izuku. This moment of solidarity was more than a mere gesture, it was an affirmation of their commitment to helping him navigate his path. As the light of the setting sun bathed them all in a gentle glow, Izuku felt a profound sense of connection and reassurance, knowing that he was not alone in his journey. As he looked out at the vast, expansive sky, he felt a renewed commitment to his own path. 21 Chapter 9, Progression. Hello, my dear readers. How are you doing? As you may remember, in the previous chapter, I mentioned that it would be the last time we saw Izuku at 13 years old. Well, here we have the first time skip of the FIC and the addition of a new character to Izuku's group. With the previous chapter, we have surpassed 100 favorites and 100 followers, and I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are truly incredible. I wonder how long it will take us to surpass 200. Well, back to the chapter. This is an interlude between the previous arc, Izuku Midoriya's origins, and the next one, the Quest mini arc. I really have nothing else to comment on, so now I will respond to your reviews. Ryustin, it's good to read you again, dude. I really have something planned with Himiko, although we won't know about her until several chapters from now. I can assure you that she will appear a little before the FIC reaches UA. Guest. Hey, thanks for the review. I really appreciate your words and the fact that you think my writing style is good. It's a concern I've had throughout the chapters. Your review really made my week, and I hope you continue to like the FIC. As I mentioned in the previous review, Himiko will appear in the FIC, but in a few chapters, and I've already thought about how to do it. Blackwolf 1208. Hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but the Force is, in fact, a god and it isn't at the same time. In fact, it could be said that it's a divine concept. What do I mean by this? As far as I understand, both in canon and legends, there's really no agreement on what exactly the Force is. I mean, it's defined as an energy field that surrounds the universe and has will, but more than that is not known. Now, it's well known that the Force is an allegory to Christianity, considering that Anakin is the space Jesus and all that. Where did you get that the Force has no body? In the final lines of the first chapter, the Force takes shape to say that line. The fact that I chose not to describe it is another thing. It has something to do with the fact that the Force is a divine concept and is something that, in theory, should be indescribable, something similar to what happens with Lovecraft's descriptions of the ancient gods, of course, taking into account the enormous differences between Lovecraft and this idiot. So yes, in fact, the Force is not a simple voice, it does have a body, but I simply chose to have it communicate without being present, because if I describe it, that would take the focus away from the plot, as this detail hardly affects what really matters, Izuku's journey. As for making it speak through one of the three from Mortis, doing so would be difficult for me due to the fact that I have 5 other characters to whom I must dedicate time. Finally, if you like, you can read Chapter 8 where the Force takes shape again so you can see that it is not a disembodied voice as you mentioned. Pigeon King, it's good to read you again, man. KOTOR rocks, and I really like Revan's character, so I decided to include him over other redeemed ones. I doubt Izuku will learn dark powers, because, in theory, he would need a teacher to teach him the basics at least. Although maybe he can learn the light variant, wink, wink. As for Izuku's potential, it's a bit hard to measure considering that so far only he and his mother are Force sensitive, and his training would be the equivalent of an initiate youngling. I really don't think Yoda is a good metric given his longevity, so it's likely that he will scale his power to the MHA universe, although I haven't fully decided yet. Sage of Chaos, hey, thanks for the review. I hope you continue to like it. Guest, arguable reader, yo. I was really debating a lot if I should respond to you. But after reading the message many times and reviewing the draft of the FIC, I realized that your intention was to warn me, so I guess thanks for that. If I keep receiving complaints about it, I can assure you that I will add the crossover tag. But I don't see the problem in not doing it for now, considering that there are moderators on the site who can tell me personally and considering that I'm not the only one who breaks the rules of the site. Also, I could argue that this is not a crossover since the entire FIC so far takes place within the MHA universe, the only element of Star Wars being the Force and everything it can do, which could be considered a quirk. Do you count dead characters who can only interact with the protagonist? This is because they don't really affect the rest of the universe. But, now that I think about it, that would be an interesting topic to discuss. Before I finish this, I would like to ask you to talk about and recommend this FIC to your friends, it would make me very happy. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a review, add it to your favorites, and follow the story. PD, I'll most likely move the story to the crossover section in the next chapter to avoid any issues. When that happens, I'll need your support to ensure the FIC continues to reach more readers. See you at the end. Disclaimer. You already know this, MHA is owned by Kohei Horikoshi. The Force and everything related to Star Wars are the intellectual property of George Lucas and the evil multi-billion-dollar company. The only thing that is mine is the computer from which this is written. Yay! Underlined and italicized text equals thoughts and/or internal dialogues. Underlined, italicized, and bold text equals Force Ghosts dialogues. Italicized and bold text equals the Force dialogues. Bold text equals powerful characters dialogues like All Might. The first step to correcting a mistake is patience. Chapter 9, Progression. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long, odd shadows across the school courtyard where the confrontation had taken place the previous evening. Katsuki Bakugo sat on a bench, the remnants of his anger still simmering just beneath the surface. His body ached from the fight, and a bruise darkened the side of his face where Izuku's power had struck him. Earlier, he had reached out to the first 2 extras and managed to convince them to keep quiet about what had happened with his intense glare and commanding presence. They swore, agreeing to follow his lead. But when he had tried to contact the red-winged fatso, Tsubasa, the situation took a dark turn. The damned extra didn't answer his calls, and no one had seen him since the night of the attack. Frustrated, he had confronted the lanky extra with the long fingers. It turned out the winged extra got a chance from some distant relative for a special experiment, one that was supposed to make him stronger, and left the city. So, with all the loose ends tied up, Katsuki replayed the events in his mind, each memory a sharp jab at his pride. He recalled the chaotic ambush, where he and the extras had caught Deku off guard. That scrawny idiot had been so arrogant, pretending he was just some quirkless loser, only to reveal he'd been hiding a quirk all along. How dare he? Deku had claimed it was a rare, late-blooming ability, but he saw through the lies. The idiot had always acted like he was better than everyone else, and now he was flaunting his so-called power in their faces. His rage had boiled over as the fight progressed. Deku, the same weakling he'd always despised, had become more aggressive. How dare he accuse him of making his life miserable? He was the one who had endured hardships, not the worthless bastard. It was always that bastard who was weak, who dragged everyone down, not the other way around. The thought of the arrogant loser, the useless burden, making excuses and playing the victim was infuriating. Suddenly, the situation escalated. Deku's attacks grew more brutal, knocking out the extras. The pathetic excuse for a human being was throwing his weight around, thinking he was tough. His anger surged as he unleashed a torrent of raw, untamed power. He answered with an explosion that singed the edge of the worthless loser's pathetic braid, showing the worthless waste of space how insignificant he was. He remembered how he insulted Deku, how his words were meant to hurt, to break the bastard down. And it worked. The sight of the loser's face, twisted in rage, only fueled his own anger. Then, the freak showed its true colors as he felt the ghostly grip of an invisible hand tightening around his throat, his vision darkening as he struggled for breath. The last thing he saw before blacking out being the look of pure satisfaction on Deku's eyes. A flicker of fear rose in his chest, but Katsuki crushed it with a growl. No, he muttered to himself, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. I'm not afraid of Deku. I'm not afraid of anyone. The way the worthless bastard had concealed his quirk for so long, only to reveal it with such overwhelming power, twisted something in Katsuki's mind. It wasn't just that Deku had a powerful ability, what made him a threat was how he used it. From his perspective, the loser's power was something dark and unpredictable. Katsuki stood up abruptly, his mind raced as he started to pace, his body tense with frustration. I won't let that happen, he spat, his voice filled with venom. I'm going to show everyone the ticking time bomb you really are, Deku. And then no one will doubt my superiority after this. In that moment, something shifted in Katsuki's mind, a realization hit him with fierce clarity. His gaze hardened, a steely resolve taking shape in his chest. He was the strongest, the one who could overcome any obstacle, and now he understood that his role extended beyond merely proving himself superior. You're my villain now, Deku. And I'm going to bring you down, he said as he punched a nearby tree, the impact jarring but satisfying. His resolve echoing in the silence that followed. No matter how long it takes. The Force Awakens. 2 years had passed since that fateful night in the alley when Hitoshi Shinso found Izuku Midoriya battered and broken after his brush with the dark side of the Force. Now at 15, both boys had matured significantly, their appearances reflecting the growth they had undergone. Izuku's appearance was a unique blend of tradition and modernity. He had grown taller, with the beginnings of a lean, muscular build from his constant training. His once boyish features were now sharper, showing the early signs of adolescence. He wore a combination of traditional Padawan attire mixed with modern streetwear. His tunic, made of a dark green fabric, was reminiscent of the Jedi robes, yet tailored to be more practical and stylish. This was paired with a brown sash tied at his waist, black cargo pants and sturdy brown boots suitable for both training and everyday wear. His hair, still a wild mess of green curls, now held two distinct Padawan braids. One braid was singed and charred, a stark reminder of the darkness he had once touched. The other braid was new, pristine, symbolizing his commitment to balance and the lessons he had learned about controlling his emotions. Hitoshi, on the other hand, had also grown taller. His dark purple hair had grown a bit longer and he now had to keep it out of his sharp, observant eyes. He preferred practical clothing, often seen in a simple black hoodie and jeans, blending into the background but ready for anything. Despite his often brooding demeanor, there was a warmth in his gaze when he was around Izuku, a testament to the strong bond they had forged. The two teens sat comfortably in Izuku's living room, basking in the peaceful atmosphere that followed their meditation session. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow through the window, creating a serene environment that both boys had come to cherish. Meditation had become a regular part of their routine, something the brainwasher found particularly beneficial for honing his quirk by developing his mental acuity further. Hitoshi stretched his legs out on the couch, his gaze shifting to Izuku with a curious expression. So, Midoriya, have you had any trouble with Bakugo lately? I know things were pretty tense between you two before. The green-haired teen leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Actually, no. Kachan has pretty much stopped bothering me. It seems like he has been focusing on his own stuff, maybe training harder or something. I haven't seen much of him, and when I do, he barely acknowledges me. Although, I always feel tension coming off him. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow. That's surprising. I would have thought he'd keep up the pressure, especially after what happened 2 years ago. Izuku shrugged. I guess it's a good thing. It's been a lot less stressful without his constant provocations. Instead, he seems more focused on his own path. I suppose he's trying to become stronger in his own way. The room was softly illuminated by the warm glow of a desk lamp, casting gentle shadows that danced across the walls. The ticking of a clock on the wall added a rhythmic background hum to their conversation. Hitoshi nodded slowly. It sounds like you're both on different journeys now. Speaking of journeys, how's the droid project coming along? I remember you were pretty excited about it. His friend's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Oh, the droid. It's been quite a process. Izuku reached for a small hollow projector on the coffee table, one that he had built with his master guidance and what was one of his great accomplishments, activated it, and a 3D image of the droid he was constructing appeared in the air between them. The detailed hologram displayed the droid's sleek design and complex internal mechanisms. I've been working on integrating advanced AI with a combat simulation program. The droid is designed to adapt and learn from every training session. It adjusts its tactics based on my performance, like, if I use a new technique, it'll start to counter it. The real challenge has been adjusting the energy matrix. It's a bit of a balancing act, trying to get the energy flow just right without overheating the core. The image on the device shifted to an array of energy conduits and power flows, intricately mapped in vibrant colors. Hitoshi's gaze shifted to a mixture of confusion and fascination as he observed the complex hologram. Wow, that's, quite a sight. Energy matrix. You're talking about. Izuku continued, his excitement palpable. Yeah, so, I've got this custom energy matrix that needs to be finely tuned. It's all about optimizing the power output for the droid's AI algorithms. As he spoke, the hollow projector began to display images of the energy matrix in various states of adjustment, showcasing intricate diagrams and fluctuating energy flows. And then there's the combat simulation aspect, where I program the droid to adapt in real time based on the different training scenarios. For example, if I practice a new fighting technique, the droid learns from it and adjusts its response. It's a bit like trying to teach a robot to think like a strategist. Hitoshi's gaze became increasingly bewildered as the hologram shifted rapidly, presenting code lines, images of scenarios and various numbers. He struggled to keep up, his eyes darting between the device and Izuku's animated explanation. That's a lot to take in. Energy matrix, combat simulation. I'm not sure I'm following all of this. In the background, the Force ghosts observed the scene with varying degrees of confusion. Obi-Wan and Yoda exchanged puzzled looks, their brows furrowed in concentration as they tried to make sense of the technical details. Leia, on the other hand, looked thoroughly lost, her expression one of concern and mild frustration. Her brow furrowed as she whispered to Obi-Wan. I have to admit, I'm not sure I understand any of this. It's like trying to follow a conversation in another language. Obi-Wan nodded in agreement, his voice low. Indeed, the concepts are quite advanced. I can see why Izuku's explanation might be overwhelming. Anakin, however, appeared focused and composed. He began mentally formulating solutions and clarifications to help Izuku convey his ideas more clearly. Maybe you should break it down into simpler parts, Sparky. Start with the basics of the energy matrix and then move on to how it integrates with the droid's learning algorithms. Luke shrugged his shoulders, not even trying to follow the complex explanations. At least Dad is having fun. The green-haired teen noticed Hitoshi's confounded expression and rubbed the back of his head, chuckling awkwardly. Sorry about that, Shinso. I guess I got a bit carried away with all the technical stuff. He paused, his smile sheepish. In summary, I still have a lot of work to do. Hitoshi's confusion began to fade as he saw the genuine, slightly embarrassed smile on Izuku's face. His eyes softened, and he let out a light laugh, shaking his head. No worries, Midoriya. I appreciate you explaining it, even if it's a bit over my head. It's impressive to see how dedicated you are to this project. The conversation shifted as they continued to chat, discussing their plans for the future and sharing stories from their school days. They spoke about their hopes for the upcoming school year, their first in high school, their aspirations, and even the little everyday moments that made life interesting. The evening grew darker, the warm glow of the setting sun fading as the stars began to appear. As Hitoshi prepared to leave, Izuku felt a surge of appreciation for their friendship. He reflected on how much Hitoshi's support had meant to him over the years, and how their shared experiences had strengthened their bond. The Force Awakens. Anakin and Obi-Wan materialized inside the dimly lit warehouse, their ethereal forms casting a faint glow that contrasted with the surrounding shadows. The vast, abandoned space was cluttered with Izuku's mechanical projects, a diverse mix of parts, tools, and half-finished inventions. The air hummed with the quiet buzz of machinery. His master's gaze swept across the room, landing on a particularly intricate contraption, an elaborate device with numerous gears, wires, and blinking lights. He raised an eyebrow, his spectral eyes reflecting the machine's glow. "Sparky, is that the prototype I jokingly suggested for a portable force amplifier?" Anakin remarked with a wry smile, his voice tinged with amusement. "I didn't think you'd actually build it." The teen, who was busy calibrating a targeting system on a nearby workbench, looked up with a sheepish grin. "You never know until you try, Master. I thought it might be useful for training, so I gave it a shot." Obi-Wan watched the exchange with amusement. Well, I see Anakin's knack for creative problem-solving has been passed down. It's almost poetic to see you dealing with the same kind of inventive genius that once drove me mad," he said, nostalgia in his voice. The chosen one of the Force rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. "I'm just glad you're having as much fun with this as I did with you. You know, Obi-Wan, I always told you that you'd miss me when I was gone." Then, the other Force ghosts arrived at the scene and began to explore the warehouse. Luke's eyes were drawn to a mechanical projectile launcher mounted on one wall, an older model he presumed, inspecting their design with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. Leia, on the other hand, studied a different project, the prototype of the small hollow projector, marveling at its delicate design. Yoda stood silently for a moment, his presence commanding respect and obedience. His eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail of Izuku's work. "Creative, your methods are. Show us, you will, how your training has advanced." The teen nodded eagerly and led them to the center of the warehouse, where a set of machines was ready for action. With a few adjustments, he set the machines to launch a series of small, fast-moving projectiles into the air. The projectiles whizzed through the air, their speed and trajectory varying unpredictably. As the first projectiles shot forth, the Padawan closed his eyes for a moment, focusing deeply. The Force flowed around him, a tangible energy that heightened his senses and sharpened his reflexes. He felt a profound connection, as if he were one with the air and the projectiles. With precise movements, he began to intercept the projectiles with effortless grace. Each one was either pushed or redirected in a controlled manner. His movements were fluid and confident, demonstrating a profound connection with the Force. The Force ghosts watched in awe. Anakin's eyes widened slightly as Izuku deflected a particularly fast-moving projectile with a strong Force push. Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. Leia's eyes sparkled with admiration as she observed Izuku's precision and control. "Remarkable," she said, nodding appreciatively. "Not a single one has managed to hit him. His skill is truly something to behold. He's taken what I taught him and elevated it to a whole new level," Anakin said, as he folded his arms, a proud smile on his face. "It's incredible to see how he's applied the training, blending it with his own ingenuity. I guess my training really paid off." His son rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Always the proud one, aren't you, Dad? But you have to admit, he's definitely got your flair for the dramatic and showing off. It's like watching a younger version of you, only with more finesse." The Force whirled around Yoda, his eyes narrowed with approval as he watched Izuku's performance. The ancient Jedi Master stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Enough, it is. Seen enough, we have," he declared, his voice resonating with authority. Izuku stopped, lowering his hands as the last of the projectiles fell to the ground. He took a deep breath, the intense focus slowly fading from his expression. "Thank you, Master Yoda," he said, bowing respectfully. Luke watched with a serene smile as the Padawan completed his demonstration. "Impressive, young one. Your connection with the Force grows stronger each day," he complimented, his eyes reflecting his satisfaction. Leia, standing beside him, added with genuine admiration, "Your precision and control are remarkable, Izuku. You've come a long way." Her gaze was warm, and her eyes shone with pride, clearly impressed by Izuku's progress. The teen's heart fluttered as he heard both his big siblings' ethereal figures complimenting him. He gazed to his master and saw him folding his arms with a proud smile, nodding in agreement. His expression conveying deep satisfaction at Izuku's achievements. Izuku's gaze drifted to the machines that lined the walls of the warehouse. Despite the praise he received, his brow furrowed slightly as he contemplated his next steps. The internal struggle to push his limits was evident, his mind racing with thoughts of further improvement. "You're already thinking about what comes next, aren't you?" Luke observed, stepping forward with a knowing look. "That's good, but don't forget to appreciate how far you've come." Yoda, keenly perceptive, noticed Izuku's distraction. His ancient eyes, filled with wisdom accumulated over centuries, studied Izuku's demeanor. The Force Master stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. Distracted, you are. The journey long and arduous, it is. Alone, progress slow. But with companions, far you will go. Consider this, you should. The teen Padawan listened intently, feeling the weight of Yoda's words pressing upon him. He reflected deeply, recognizing the truth in the Grandmaster's advice. "I understand, Master Yoda, Master Luke. I've been so focused on improving that I forgot the importance of having others by my side." "Master Yoda is right, Izuku," Obi-Wan added with a reassuring tone. "Even the greatest Jedi needed allies. Don't be afraid to seek out others who can help you on this journey." The atmosphere in the warehouse was electric with the energy of the recent demonstration. The air buzzed with the lingering presence of the Force, and the expressions on the faces of the Force ghosts reflected a mixture of pride and contemplation. Obi-Wan wore a serene smile, Leia looked thoughtful yet proud, Anakin's pride was evident, and Luke's eyes radiated encouragement. Izuku remained silent for a moment, reflecting on the profound words of his masters. His gaze wandered around the room, taking in the advice given and considering his next steps. Suddenly, he felt a sharp shift in the Force. A distinct energy approached rapidly, drawing his attention. He noticed a small spy robot at the door, its mechanical eyes scanning the interior with curiosity, going straight for Izuku's machines, ignoring the boy completely. The Padawan moved swiftly toward the door, his curiosity piqued. As he reached it, a figure tackled him from the side, and they both fell to the ground. Izuku found himself underneath the unknown figure, which he could tell was a girl from what he accidentally touched. His master chuckled, his voice filled with amusement as he leaned back with a smug grin. Well, Sparky. Making friends in interesting ways, I see." Obi-Wan sighed deeply, covering his face with a hand in embarrassment. But Anakin couldn't resist teasing. To be young again. This reminds me of the times when Padme and I were alone at her apartment and had some rather intense negotiations." Luke's ethereal face flushed a purplish hue, his eyes betraying discomfort as he clearly didn't want to hear about his parents' playful moments. Leia, having shared the same thought as her brother and taking charge as the decisive sibling, stepped forward and smacked her father on the head. "Enough, Dad. Focus on the situation at hand." The atmosphere shifted from one of reflection to light-hearted chaos as the scene unfolded. Izuku, still on the ground with the girl, glanced around, questioning the Force with a mixture of surprise and frustration. "Why didn't you warn me about this?" he thought, feeling a subtle reply from the Force. "And ruin my fun. Besides, you have to learn to perceive your surroundings on your own." The Padawan, feeling the weight of the girl who had tackled him pressing down on him, scolded himself. Stupid. Then, with a hint of concern, he asked, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The figure above him shifted and then stood up, revealing a young girl with a confident stance and energetic demeanor that were immediately apparent. She had striking, cross-shaped, large expressive eyes that sparkled with boundless curiosity. Her lively presence matching her vibrant, wild, and spiky pink hair. Her outfit being one inventive and eccentric that included a utility belt trimming with gadgets. She brushed herself off and extended a hand to Izuku. "Hi, I'm Mei Hatsume, future CEO of Hatsume Industries. Do you want to make babies with me?" Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Izuku's face turned a deep red, looking as if he were about to burst into flames. He stammered, unable to form coherent words. Behind him, Anakin fell to the ground, laughing uncontrollably. "Oh, this is priceless." He gasped between fits of laughter. Sparky, you sure know how to pick them. Obi-Wan and Luke exchanged looks of surprise and mild embarrassment. Obi-Wan's face, usually so composed, was now flushed with a mix of shock and mortification. His hand covered his face, as if trying to hide from the situation. Luke, having more experience than the old master, couldn't help to feel a vivid flush rise to his cheeks. His eyes widened, reflecting both his surprise and sympathy for Izuku. His awkwardness was palpable, as he shifted uncomfortably, trying to process Mei's bold introduction. Yoda chuckled softly, his ancient eyes twinkling with amusement. Enthusiastic, the youth are. Leia, stepping forward with a wry smile, observed Mei with a mixture of curiosity and fondness. She saw in Mei's relentless optimism a spark of determination that reminded her of her own youthful drive. Oh, my, I like this girl. Though, I must say, this sort of talk should come much later, not right when you meet someone, Leia commented, her tone both amused and mildly exasperated. The pink-haired teenager, completely absorbed in her excitement, continued. If you want, we can start right now. Just make sure you call me Mei, okay? Anakin's laughter roared on, his amusement unabated. Oh my god, I can't. I can't, he managed between bursts of laughter. Mei seemed oblivious to Izuku's flustered state as she began circling one of his modified machines. Her eyes, filled with wonder, examined every detail of the intricate machinery. Her fascination with the babies was evident, her gestures animated and enthusiastic. Izuku, now in a state of utter panic, screamed mentally for help through his mental bond with his masters. Help! Someone, please! The first thing he heard was his master raucous snickers, followed by Leia's tone of reassurance. Breathe and just be yourself as always, she encouraged, her voice calm and steady. Luke, with a deadpan expression that managed to convey his feelings through the connection, commented, Sis, that's the worst advice I've ever heard. Izuku chose to ignore the smack of the force that reverberated after Luke's comment and took a deep breath, managing to gather his composure. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Hatsume. Mei continued to circle the machine, ignoring the green-haired Padawan. Her excitement uncontainable as she inspected it and made enthusiastic comments about the baby. Izuku's face reddened again as he realized Mei was referring to her inventions as babies. His previous assumptions seemed misguided, and he felt a wave of relief mixed with chagrin. Luke, watching the scene unfold, muttered under his breath, maybe we should keep Dad away from Izuku's impressionable and pure mind. Finally, Mei placed a finger on Izuku's chest, her expression resolute. I'm decided. From now on, we'll make the best babies in the world. Izuku sighed deeply, looking around the abandoned warehouse with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. What has my life become?